I didn't tell you that I changed the reservation time, and since you didn't show up, I got on the train first. I could hear a woman laughing while sitting next to my husband, Harry, on the phone. Why did you do that? Come back now. It's your fault for being lazy and getting left behind. You can handle it from here. I cancelled your ticket because it was expensive. That's not what I meant. Well, we're going through a tunnel now, so I'm hanging up. Just give up and go home quietly. With that, Harry ended the call without hesitation. No, that's not what I meant. If this keeps up, they're going to be in trouble. I'm a housewife, married to Harry for 5 years. We had our son, Tom, right after getting married, so he's 6 now. For a while, things went well with the 3 of us, but slowly, Harry started ignoring Tom. I wonder if he was lying when he promised me that things would be different. Looking back, it feels like he was just saying what I wanted to hear. Harry says he's always busy with work and doesn't pay attention to Tom. When I tell him to spend more time with him, he ignores me. Lately, he's been saying hurtful things. The other day, Harry even said divorce in front of Tom. I'm busy with work. You're just a housewife. My house, my rules. If you don't like it, why don't you just divorce me? You can't make it on your own without my money, so don't talk back. I wanted to argue, but as a housewife, I didn't have the right to. If I argued back, it might really lead to a divorce. Honestly, I've thought about divorcing him many times, but I never went through with it because of our son. Even though society is more accepting of single-parent families, single parents still face a lot of judgment, and I didn't want Tom to suffer. What should I do? The past few days have been exhausting, both physically and emotionally. One day, after dropping Tom off at daycare, I ran into my neighbor, Sarah. Are you okay, Janet? You look really tired. Is Tom in kindergarten? I can't believe you're so tired when they take care of him all day. I guess if you had a lot of attention and money like I do, your life would be easier. I feel sorry for you. Sarah's husband works a lot, but I've heard he makes a lot of money. She's always wearing expensive clothes and accessories, but she's not very elegant. Every time I see her, she brags about her family. She's not a bad person, but I didn't like her. I wished she'd understand my situation. Normally, I would have just laughed it off, but I was so tired that day, I couldn't help but complain about Harry. No, I'm not tired from work. My husband always complains about how busy he is and doesn't care about Tom. He's been really irritated lately and even said things like, "If you complain, we'll get a divorce." I feel bad for our son. As soon as I said this, I regretted it. When I looked at Sarah, her eyes had changed. You're a full-time housewife. How dare you complain about your husband, the one who works hard to provide? I feel bad for him. I've never complained like that. My husband works hard, so I take care of my family. This is why women like you, unattractive and lazy, can't manage things. I'm such a great wife and mother. You should learn from me. Sarah took the chance to look down on me and talk about how much better she was. I knew she would do this. Maybe it's best not to get involved with her too much. I kept the conversation short, said goodbye, and went home. That night, Sarah suddenly came over. I didn't invite her, but she invited herself in. I want to get to know you better, Janet. How about we have dinner together tonight? I like to cook, but my husband is very picky, so I thought I'd visit you and learn some recipes. I'd eat anything, so could you cook something for us? Sarah and her child barged in and tried to eat our dinner without hesitation. Harry, being friendly, invited them in, but it was me who had to serve them. Sarah's kids ran around while she and Harry kept talking about how proud she was of her family. I was frustrated. We had finished the meal and sat down at the table when Sarah started talking about the conversation we had earlier. Harry, you're really trying hard, aren't you? You should tell your wife that. I told her that since you work so hard, it's only fair that she takes good care of the child. I think I'm perfect at doing that for my family. I work hard every day, taking care of the house and kids for my husband. There's no way I could complain about that. Janet, you really talked to her about this? I can't believe you. You only live off what I earn. Just barely enough. I didn't want to argue, so I just said, "Yes, you're right." Then, Sarah said something unexpected. How about we go on a trip to treat your husband? The kids will be graduating soon, and it seems like the perfect time. My husband works away from home, so I feel like I'm neglecting the kids. It'd be more fun with more people. If you're okay with it, I'd love to join you. I didn't think Harry would agree to it, but he seemed happy with Sarah's idea, especially since she was sticking up for him. Even the kids, who didn't know better, were excited about the trip. Everyone except me was ready to go. Leave all the planning to Janet. She's a stay-at-home mom, so she has plenty of time for it. That's impossible. With your salary, we can't afford to take 5 people on a trip. Plus, this is a one-parent family. You're blaming your own son? I can't believe you. You don't even appreciate me. You're a disgrace. That's right. You don't appreciate me enough, Janet. You don't know how much I'm doing. Then do you think you're such a great person? I stopped myself from saying more, apologized to both of them, and ended up planning the trip. Your neighbor's struggling without her husband, so you better do all the work. Who do you think is raising our son all on my own? He can't keep getting away with this. I was really frustrated, but I kept it in. With the hotels and everything they wanted, the trip would cost several $1,000s. Spending that kind of money would drain all my savings. I've always provided for us. You should at least pay for this trip. If you don't have the money, borrow it or ask your parents. Well, if you're borrowing money, you'll be paying it back for the rest of your life. No matter what I said, Harry wasn't going to listen. I gave up trying to argue and started figuring out how to make the trip work. After some effort with points and coupons, I finally managed to plan it. I managed to book a nice hotel for the trip, and Sarah seemed really happy with the plan. Didn't my ideas turn out great? Sarah said, acting like she had come up with everything. I thought of every detail to make sure Harry had a great time, but it was me who did all the work. Harry was really pleased with her. Look at how useless you are, Janet, when Sarah is so talented. I can't believe you made me feel like this. Why am I always the one to be blamed? I never expected marriage to be like this. But still, I couldn't get a divorce for Tom's sake. I kept telling myself that. On the day of the trip, I went with Harry and Tom to the bus station. Oh, yay, the bus. Tom's eyes lit up. This was his first trip in a while. I bought the tickets, and we waited for Sarah and her kids at the bus stop. While we were waiting, Tom needed to use the restroom, so I took him, but when we returned to the bus stop, Harry and the luggage were gone. Where did he go? Sarah still wasn't there, either. I tried to call Harry, but he didn't answer. I had no choice but to call Sarah. Oh, I didn't tell you? We got on the bus already. Your husband wanted to ride the premium limousine bus, so I changed the time. I asked Sarah to give the phone to Harry so I could talk to him, and when my annoyed husband picked up, he said, "Honestly, you and Tom are annoying. I'm going to enjoy my trip with Sarah, who understands me. I'll meet up with you later, so just wait for me." I tried to talk to him, but he quickly hung up. "Sorry, I guess we can't go on the trip we were excited about. I'm really sorry." Tom, always kind, said, "It's okay, Mommy, I'm happy because you're here." His words almost made me cry. "We'll go home today. Next time, I'll take you somewhere even better." When we got back home, I saw a man in a suit standing at Sarah's door. He must be someone connected to her. I didn't want to get involved, so I pretended not to notice and was about to walk by when he started talking to me. 3 days later, Harry called me. "What happened with the hotel payment? Get me $3,000 right now." There was no way I could pay that much money. "Why didn't you pay the bill in advance? You're so stupid. Get over here now. You told me to leave, and now you want me to come? I've had enough." I had arranged the hotel through my father's connections. If I didn't show up, they'd have to pay the full $3,000. When Harry told me not to go on the trip, I contacted my father and the hotel to explain the situation. "If you don't pay now, we're getting a divorce." "Oh, really? That's perfect. I wanted a divorce anyway." When I said that, I couldn't help but smile. "Really? Well, good for you. I'm much better off with him, and I can support him. Thanks for divorcing him. You really are an idiot. Unlike some clueless wife, Sarah actually gets me." I was laughing inside at how silly they sounded, but I wasn't going to show it. "Well, anyway, you'll have to pay for the hotel now." Then Harry went quiet. Of course, he did. His salary is only $700. Harry had been pretending to work at a big company, but we were managing to pay rent with the passive income from the property I bought when I was single. Harry only contributed about $300 a month, which he proudly claimed was enough to cover all our food costs. "Honey, you shouldn't lie," I said. "Have you been lying? You've been lying, haven't you? I can't have a man who doesn't make enough money." I wasn't saying much anymore. I handed the phone to the man standing next to me. "I'm divorcing you. Janet, you have been cheating on me, haven't you? Why are you there, honey? I thought you were away for work." To my surprise, The man in the suit who had talked to me 3 days ago was Sarah's husband, Jack. 3 days earlier, when I came home after being left behind, Jack had approached me. He had returned home early from work and found out about the affair. Jack apologized and told me that Sarah and Harry were having an affair. He explained that he had come home unexpectedly to gather proof of it. I had my father contact the hotel where Sarah and Harry stayed and asked them to take photos. The pictures showed Sarah and Harry kissing lightly and being overly affectionate with each other. Harry, who seemed so happy with Sarah, made me sick to my stomach. I already had the divorce papers Harry had thrown at me, signed by him, because he had threatened divorce before. Once I learned about the affair, I filed the divorce papers. It was a tough decision, but I had thought it over with Tom in mind. And then, I was free from Harry. I found out that Sarah's kids weren't at the hotel, so I rushed to find them. They had been left at Sarah's parents' house. Jack went to pick them up and showed Sarah's parents the evidence of the affair. They apologized to Jack with tears in their eyes. We were waiting to hear from Harry and Sarah about the whole situation. No, that's not true. I only pretended to have an affair with Harry to make Janet change her attitude, Sarah said, making excuses, but it was obvious she had planned everything, leaving her kids with her parents while she tried to have an affair with Harry, using my money. She couldn't get away with it. I'm sorry for everything I said. I'll pay for this trip with my own money, so please forgive me, but I couldn't just forgive her that easily. Well, after all, a man like you, who's so unattractive, is finished once you get a divorce. You can't do anything without my money, so don't argue with me about it. I don't want a man who can't support me. The hotel told Harry that if he didn't pay, they would report it to the police, but Harry didn't have enough money, so he had to beg Sarah's parents for help. In the end, Sarah's parents paid for the hotel expenses, and Harry and Sarah were able to go home. Later that day, I hired a lawyer and officially filed for divorce, alimony, custody of Tom, and child support. I told Harry that Tom didn't need a father who ignored him and left him behind. I finally made it clear that it was better for Tom not to be with him. Jack also got a divorce without any problems. Sarah, who didn't want to let Jack go, tried to stay in the house, but he had already moved his important things out while she was cheating. So, he left with the kids and later filed for divorce through a lawyer. Since Sarah wasn't working, she couldn't afford the rent, and eventually got evicted. She had to move back to her parents' house, where they tried to teach her a lesson. As for me, I was finally at peace. I could live with Tom without any worries. I invited Jack and his kids to stay at the hotel. Life felt so much better now. Tom and I were much happier than when Harry was around. I looked at the kids, smiling, and thought to myself, I wish this life could last forever.
The shrill ring of the phone pierced the quiet of our kitchen, making me jump. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered, expecting to hear Bennett's voice. Instead, my mother-in-law's saccharine tone oozed through the receiver. "Miranda, darling," Claire cooed, "I'm hosting a little family gathering next weekend. I'd love for you to sing for us." My stomach clenched. In the 15 years I'd been married to Bennett, Claire had never once asked me to perform. "Sing?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, yes," she continued, her words dripping with false enthusiasm. "Everyone's always going on about your voice. I thought it was high time we all heard it." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "That's unexpected," I managed. Claire's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Don't be modest, dear. It'll be lovely. Sophie can accompany you on the piano. I've been giving her lessons, you know." My free hand clenched into a fist. Of course, I knew. Claire had been monopolizing my daughter's weekends for months now, all under the guise of quality time with Grandma. "I'll have to check with Bennett," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, I've already spoken to him. He thinks it's a wonderful idea." Of course he did. Bennett never could see through his mother's machinations. "Well then," I said, forcing a smile into my voice, "I guess I'll start practicing." "Wonderful," Claire chirped. "I can't wait to hear what you come up with. Ta-ta!" The line went dead and I slumped against the counter, my mind reeling. What was Claire up to? "Mom?" Sophie's voice startled me. I turned to see my 12-year-old daughter standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you okay?" I plastered on a smile. "Of course, sweetie. That was just Grandma Claire. She wants me to sing at her party next weekend." Sophie's face lit up. "Really? That's great. Maybe I can play for you." My heart sank. Actually, honey, Grandma suggested that already. Oh, Sophie's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Well, we can practice together, right? Before I could answer, the front door opened, and Bennett's voice called out, "I'm home." He strode into the kitchen, his tie already loosened, and gave me a quick peck on the cheek. "Hey, hon, did Mom call you about the party?" I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. "She did. It was quite a surprise." Bennett grinned, oblivious to my discomfort. "Isn't it great? Mom's always talking about how talented you are. It'll be nice for everyone to hear you sing." I forced a smile. "Right. Nice." Sophie tugged on her father's sleeve. "Dad, can I go to Grandma's tomorrow to practice? She said she'd teach me a new piece." Bennett ruffled her hair. "Sure thing, kiddo. Your grandma loves spending time with you." I bit my tongue, holding back the words I longed to say. How Claire was driving a wedge between me and my daughter. How she constantly undermined me with backhanded compliments and subtle jabs. Instead, I said, "Actually, Sophie, I thought maybe we could practice together this weekend. It's been a while since we've had some mother-daughter time." Sophie's face fell. "But Grandma's expecting me. She said she has a surprise for me." Bennett chuckled. "Come on, Miranda. Let her go. You two can practice during the week." I felt my resolve crumbling under their combined gazes. "Fine," I said, my voice tight. "Have fun at Grandma's, Sophie." As Sophie bounced out of the kitchen, chattering excitedly about her plans, I turned back to the sink, blinking back tears of frustration. Bennett came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "This is going to be great, honey. Mom's so proud of you." I leaned back against him, wishing I could make him understand. But as always, when it came to Claire, Bennett was blind to her manipulations. As I stood there in my husband's embrace, I couldn't shake the feeling that Claire's invitation was more than just a chance for me to sing. It was a challenge, and for once I was determined not to back down. The weekend arrived with a sense of dread. As I watched Sophie pack her overnight bag for Claire's, my heart ached. She hummed a tune I didn't recognize, probably something her grandmother had taught her. "Sophie, honey," I said, trying to keep my voice light, "maybe next weekend we could do something together? Just us girls?" She barely glanced up. "Maybe, if I'm not busy with Grandma." The words stung like a slap. I opened my mouth to respond, but Bennett appeared in the doorway. "Ready to go, kiddo?" he asked, car keys jingling in his hand. Sophie bounced up, all smiles. "Yep, bye, Mom." As they left, I sank onto Sophie's bed, fighting back tears. When had I become an afterthought in my own daughter's life? The house felt empty without Sophie's laughter. I tried to distract myself by practicing for Claire's party, but every song felt hollow. By Sunday evening, I was a bundle of nerves. When Bennett's car pulled into the driveway, I rushed to the door. Sophie burst in, chattering excitedly. "Mom, Grandma taught me a new song for the party. Want to hear?" Before I could answer, she was at the piano, her small fingers dancing across the keys. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, far beyond what I thought Sophie capable of playing. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." I managed, my throat tight. Bennett beamed with pride. "Isn't it amazing? Mom's really brought out Sophie's talent." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As Sophie continued to play, I retreated to the kitchen, busying myself with dinner preparations. Bennett followed me. "Hey, you okay?" I took a deep breath. "Bennett, don't you think Claire's been monopolizing Sophie lately?" He frowned. "What do you mean? She's just being a good grandmother. But every weekend and now this party." I trailed off, unsure how to express my fears without sounding paranoid. Bennett's expression softened. "Miranda, Mom's just trying to help. You know how busy you've been with work. She's giving Sophie something special." I bit back a retort. How could I explain that what Claire was giving Sophie was a wedge between us? The week crawled by, each day bringing us closer to Claire's party. I tried to connect with Sophie, but she was always rushing off to practice with her grandmother. By Friday, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. As we drove to Claire's, my stomach churned with anxiety. Bennett reached over and squeezed my hand. "You'll be great," he said, misreading my tension. Claire's house was already bustling when we arrived. She greeted us at the door, all smiles and air kisses. "Miranda, darling," she cooed, "I can't wait to hear you sing. I do hope you've prepared something appropriate." I forced a smile. "Of course, Claire. I wouldn't want to disappoint." As we moved into the living room, I overheard Claire whispering to another guest. Such a shame. All that potential wasted on silly pop songs. My cheeks burned. I looked for Sophie, hoping for a friendly face, but she was already at the piano, surrounded by admiring relatives. Claire clapped her hands, calling for attention. Before we begin, I have a special treat. Sophie has prepared a piece to play for us. Sophie, darling? My daughter nodded, her face serious as she began to play. The room fell silent, enraptured by the music. I watched, a mix of pride and pain swirling in my chest. This was my daughter, yet I felt no connection to her talent. As Sophie finished, the room erupted in applause. Claire swept forward, enveloping Sophie in a hug. Wasn't she marvelous? Claire gushed. Such talent, it must skip a generation. The room tittered with laughter. I stood frozen, the implied insult hanging in the air. Bennett, oblivious as always, joined in the applause. In that moment, watching Claire bask in my daughter's reflected glory, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about a party or a song. This was war, and I was done playing nice. The days following Claire's party were a blur of tension and barely concealed anger. I tried to talk to Bennett about Claire's behavior, but he brushed off my concerns, chalking it up to family dynamics. It was clear I was on my own in this battle. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry in Sophie's room, I stumbled upon a crumpled piece of paper tucked under her bed. Curiosity got the better of me, and I smoothed it out. My heart sank as I read the childish scrawl, "Things Grandma Claire says about Mom." 1. Mom doesn't understand real music. 2. Mom wastes her talent on silly songs. 3. Mom is jealous of my piano skills. 4. Mom doesn't support my dreams like Grandma does. The list went on, each point a dagger to my heart. I sank onto Sophie's bed, the paper trembling in my hands. How long had Claire been poisoning my daughter against me? Just then, Sophie burst into the room. Her eyes widened when she saw what I was holding. "Mom, that's private," she cried, snatching the paper from my hands. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sophie, honey, we need to talk about this. These things Grandma's been saying." "They're true," Sophie interrupted, her face flushing. "Grandma says you're just jealous because I'm better at music than you ever were." The words hit me like a physical blow. I struggled to find a response, but Sophie was already storming out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I sat there, stunned, as the full weight of Claire's manipulation settled over me. She hadn't just been trying to win Sophie's affection. She'd been actively turning my daughter against me. That evening, as Bennett and I were cleaning up after dinner, I decided to make one last attempt to open his eyes. "Bennett," I began cautiously, "I found something in Sophie's room today. A list of things your mother's been saying about me." He frowned, pausing in drying a plate. "What kind of things?" I recounted some of the items on the list, watching his face carefully. To my dismay, I saw more confusion than concern. "Are you sure you're not misinterpreting?" he asked. "Mom can be blunt sometimes, but I'm sure she doesn't mean any harm." I slammed the dish I was washing into the sink, soapy water splashing everywhere. "For God's sake, Bennett, when are you going to see what's really going on?" Before he could respond, Sophie appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Is this about my recital?" I turned confused. "What recital?" Sophie's eyes darted between Bennett and me. "The one at school next week?" "Grandma's been helping me prepare a special song." My heart sank. How had I not known about this? "Sophie, why didn't you tell me?" She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Grandma said it would be a nice surprise for you." I felt the last thread of my composure snap. "A surprise? Your grandmother has no right to." "Miranda," Bennett cut in, his voice sharp. "That's enough. You're upsetting Sophie." I looked at my daughter, saw the tears welling in her eyes, and felt my anger deflate, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. "I'm sorry, sweetie. Of course, I'd love to hear you sing at your recital." Sophie nodded, then fled back to her room. Bennett gave me a disappointed look before following her. Left alone in the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, my mind racing. The recital. It was the perfect opportunity to show Sophie and Bennett that I wasn't the villain Claire had painted me to be. To prove that I could support my daughter's talents without Claire's interference. As I formulated a plan, a small, determined smile crept onto my face. Claire thought she had won, but the final act was yet to come, and this time I would be the one writing the score. The day of Sophie's recital arrived, and my nerves were frayed to breaking point. I'd spent the week trying to connect with Sophie, but she remained distant, always rushing off to practice with Claire. Bennett, sensing the tension, had become a silent mediator, his eyes darting between us with growing concern. As we drove to the school, Sophie clutched a folder to her chest, her knuckles white. "Grandma's meeting us there," she announced, her voice tinged with excitement. My stomach clenched, but I forced a smile. "That's nice, sweetie. I can't wait to hear you sing." The auditorium was packed with proud parents and fidgeting siblings. We found seats near the front, saving one for Claire. I scanned the crowd, my heart racing when I spotted her sweeping down the aisle, resplendent in a designer suit. "There's my star!" Claire exclaimed, embracing Sophie. She barely acknowledged me with a curt nod. As the lights dimmed, I leaned over to Sophie. "Break a leg, honey, I love you." She smiled weakly, then hurried backstage. Claire settled into her seat, a smug expression on her face. The recital began, a parade of nervous children stumbling through simple melodies. Then Sophie stepped onto the stage. My breath caught in my throat. She looked so grown up, so poised. The piano intro began, and Sophie started to sing. Her voice, clear and sweet, filled the auditorium. I felt tears prick my eyes, overwhelmed with pride. But as the song progressed, my pride turned to confusion, then dismay. The lyrics were unfamiliar, the melody complex. This wasn't a children's song, it was an aria from a famous opera. I glanced at Claire, who was beaming triumphantly. She caught my eye and whispered, "I thought Sophie deserved a real challenge, not some silly pop tune." Anger flared in my chest. This was what Claire had been secretly preparing? A piece far beyond Sophie's years, designed to showcase Claire's teaching rather than Sophie's natural talent? As Sophie hit a particularly difficult passage, her voice wavered. I saw panic flash in her eyes. Without thinking, I stood up, my own voice rising to support hers. Our voices blended, steadying Sophie and carrying her through to the end. The audience erupted in applause. Sophie's face lit up as she spotted me, relief and joy shining in her eyes. For a moment it was just us, mother and daughter, connected by music. Then Claire was on her feet, rushing to the stage. "Oh, darling, you were marvelous," she gushed, pulling Sophie into a hug. "I knew you could do it." I watched, my moment of connection shattered, as Claire basked in the audience's admiration. Bennett touched my arm. "That was amazing, Miranda. I had no idea you could sing like that." Before I could respond, Sophie broke free from Claire's embrace and ran to me. "Mom, did you hear? We sang together." I hugged her tightly. "We did, sweetheart. You were wonderful." Claire's voice cut through our moment. "Sophie, dear, come take a photo with Grandma. We must commemorate your triumph." Sophie hesitated, looking between Claire and me. I saw the conflict in her eyes, the pull of Claire's influence warring with our rekindled connection. In that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't let Claire steal this from me, from us. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I think Sophie and I should take a picture together first. After all, we did just perform an impromptu duet." Claire's face darkened. "Now, Miranda, don't be selfish. Sophie's performance was the result of my teaching, and—" "No," Sophie interrupted, her voice small but firm. "I want a picture with Mom first." The shock on Claire's face mirrored my own surprise. As Sophie pulled me towards the stage, I caught sight of Bennett's expression, a mix of confusion and dawning realization. Standing there with Sophie, surrounded by applauding parents and beaming children, I felt a shift. The battle lines had been drawn, and for the first time I wasn't standing alone. As the camera flashed, capturing our smiling faces, I knew the war with Claire was far from over. But now I had hope, and I had my daughter back. The aftermath of Sophie's recital brought a fragile peace to our household. Sophie, buoyed by our duet, began seeking me out for impromptu singing sessions. It was like a balm to my wounded heart, but I knew Claire wouldn't give up so easily. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Bennett approached me with a hesitant smile. "Miranda, I've been thinking. Maybe we should have a family dinner this weekend. Invite Mom over, try to clear the air." I nearly dropped the knife I was holding. "Clear the air? Bennett, your mother has been—" "I know," he interrupted, surprising me. "I've been noticing things. But she's still family. We need to address this head on." Reluctantly, I agreed. Perhaps this was my chance to confront Claire with Bennett as a witness. The night of the dinner arrived, tension thick in the air. Claire swept in, all smiles and false warmth. "Miranda, darling, how lovely to see you taking an interest in homemaking again." I bit my tongue, forcing a smile. As we sat down to eat, Claire dominated the conversation, regaling us with tales of her musical accomplishments. I caught Sophie's eye across the table, seeing a flicker of doubt in her expression. "You know," Claire said, helping herself to more wine, "I've been thinking. Sophie's talent is truly exceptional. She needs proper nurturing. I've spoken to a friend who runs an elite music academy. They're willing to offer Sophie a scholarship, but it would mean her living with me during the week." The room fell silent. I felt as if all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. "Absolutely not," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Claire's eyes narrowed. "Now, Miranda, don't be selfish. This is about Sophie's future." "Selfish?" I explained, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "You're the one who's been manipulating my daughter, turning her against me." "Mom, Grandma, please don't," pleaded, her eyes wide with distress. Bennett stood up, his face pale. "Maybe we should all calm down and—" "No, Bennett." I cut him off. "It's time we address this. Your mother has been systematically undermining me, poisoning Sophie against me, and you've been too blind to see it." Claire's facade cracked, her voice turning cold. "How dare you? I've only ever wanted what's best for Sophie. Unlike you, who's content to let her talent wither while you chase your own faded dreams." The words hit me like a physical blow. I saw Sophie's face crumple, tears welling in her eyes. In that moment, I knew I had to do something drastic. I couldn't let this continue. "Enough," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "Claire, I challenge you. At the next family gathering, we'll both perform. Let everyone see who's really the talented one in this family." Claire's eyebrows shot up, a smirk playing at her lips. "My dear, are you sure you want to embarrass yourself like that?" "Mom, what are you doing?" Sophie whispered, her eyes wide. I met Claire's gaze, unflinching. "I'm dead serious, unless you're afraid to accept." A tense silence fell over the room. Bennett looked between us, bewildered. Sophie clutched her napkin, her knuckles white. Finally, Claire nodded, a predatory gleam in her eye. "Very well, Miranda, if that's what it takes to settle this nonsense once and for all, I accept your challenge." As Claire swept out of the house, leaving a wake of stunned silence, the full weight of what I'd done crashed over me. I just challenged a former piano major to a musical duel in front of our entire family. But as I looked at Sophie's face, a mix of worry and something that looked like hope, I knew I couldn't back down. This was my chance to reclaim my daughter's respect, to show her the strength of her mother's love. I excused myself and retreated to our bedroom, my mind racing. I had 2 weeks to prepare for the performance of my life. As I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking, I realized this wasn't just about music anymore. This was about saving my family. With a deep breath, I reached for my old songbook. It was time to remind everyone, including myself, of who Miranda really was. The day of the family gathering arrived, my stomach a knot of nerves. I'd spent every spare moment practicing, determined to show Claire and everyone else what I was truly capable of. As we drove to the venue, a rented hall for the occasion, Sophie's excited chatter filled the car. "Mom, are you nervous? Grandma's been practicing all week, too." I forced a smile. "A little, sweetie, but I'm mostly excited to sing for everyone." Bennett squeezed my hand. "You'll be great, Miranda. Both of you will." The hall was already bustling when we arrived. I spotted Claire holding court near the piano, surrounded by adoring relatives. She caught my eye and smirked, raising her glass in a mock toast. As the evening progressed, I found myself growing increasingly anxious. Claire had yet to perform, and I worried she might back out of our agreement. Just as I was about to confront her, Sophie tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can I play something on the piano?" Before I could answer, Claire swooped in. "Of course, darling. Why don't you play that lovely piece we've been working on?" I bit my tongue, not wanting to cause a scene. Sophie settled at the piano, her small fingers poised over the keys. As she began to play, I noticed something odd. The melody was familiar, but not from our recent practice sessions. It was an old lullaby I used to sing to Sophie when she was a baby. Tears pricked my eyes as Sophie's clear voice joined the piano. This wasn't one of Claire's complex pieces. It was a simple, heartfelt song that Sophie and I had shared countless times. As the last notes faded, the room erupted in applause. Sophie beamed, her eyes seeking mine for approval. I nodded, too choked up to speak. Claire, looking flustered, quickly took center stage. Well, wasn't that sweet? Now I believe Miranda and I had a little musical duel planned, shall we? The room fell silent, all eyes on us. Claire seated herself at the piano, launching into a technically impressive but emotionally sterile rendition of a classical piece. I watched the audience's reactions, noting the polite smiles and stifled yawns. As Claire finished, she turned to me with a triumphant grin. "Top that, dear." I took a deep breath and stepped forward. But before I could begin, Sophie piped up, "Grandma, why don't you sing something?" "Yeah, you always say singing is the true test of musical talent." A hush fell over the room. Claire's face paled slightly. "Oh, I don't know, darling. My voice isn't what it used to be." "Please, Grandma." Sophie pressed, her eyes wide and innocent. "You're always telling me how important it is to challenge yourself." Trapped by her own words, Claire reluctantly stood. Well, I suppose I could try a little something. What followed was painful to watch. Claire's voice, thin and wavering, struggled through a simple folk song. She hit several wrong notes, her face growing redder with each mistake. The audience shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. As Claire trailed off, visibly shaken, I felt a mix of triumph and pity. This was my moment. I could humiliate her as she had done to me so many times. But looking at Sophie's confused face, I knew that wasn't the right path. Instead, I stepped forward and began to sing the lullaby Sophie had played earlier. My voice, strong and clear, filled the room. I saw recognition dawn in the eyes of my family members. This was the real me, the singer they had known before Claire's influence had diminished me. As I sang, I locked eyes with Claire. Her expression was a mix of shock, anger, and something else. Was it respect? The room was silent except for my voice, everyone transfixed. Just as I reached the final verse, Sophie joined in, her sweet voice blending perfectly with mine. We finished the song together, our voices intertwining in perfect harmony. The applause was deafening. Sophie threw her arms around me, laughing and crying at the same time. I hugged her tightly, feeling years of tension melt away. But as I looked up, I saw Claire storming out of the room, her face a mask of fury. Bennett followed her, his expression torn. I realized then that while I might have won this battle, the war was far from over, and the next confrontation would determine the future of our family once and for all. The aftermath of the family gathering was like the calm before a storm. Sophie clung to me, her eyes shining with newfound admiration, while Bennett oscillated between pride in my performance and concern for his mother. Claire had vanished, leaving a wake of whispers and speculation. 3 days later, as I was helping Sophie with her homework, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Claire, her face a mask of cold determination. "We need to talk," she said, brushing past me into the living room. Bennett appeared from his study, his face etched with worry. "Mom, what's going on?" Claire's eyes darted between us. "I've made a decision. I'm taking Sophie to live with me." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What?" I gasped, my voice barely audible. "It's clear that Sophie's talent is being wasted here," Claire continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. I'm filing for custody." Bennett stepped forward, his face pale. "Mom, you can't be serious. Sophie belongs with us." "Does she?" Claire's eyes narrowed. With a father too blind to see what's best for her, and a mother who's more concerned with her own faded dreams than her daughter's future? Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and anger burst forth like a dam breaking. "How dare you!" I shouted, my hands shaking. "You've been poisoning Sophie against me for years, manipulating her, trying to steal her away. And for what? To relive your own glory days through her." Claire recoiled, shock flashing across her face before it hardened again. "I've only ever wanted what's best for Sophie. Unlike you, Miranda, I can see her true potential." "Stop it!" Sophie's voice cut through the tension. We all turned to see her standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Just stop fighting." I moved to comfort her, but she backed away. "Sophie, honey." "No," she cried. "I'm tired of all the secrets and the mean words. Grandma, why did you tell me Mom doesn't love me as much as you do?" The room fell silent. Bennett's head snapped towards his mother, disbelief etched on his face. "Mom, is that true?" Claire's composure cracked. I never meant." But Sophie wasn't finished. "And Mom, why didn't you tell me Grandma was lying? Why did you let me believe her?" I felt the weight of my own mistakes crushing me. "Oh, Sophie, I'm so sorry. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Bennett's voice was low, dangerous. "Miranda, how long has this been going on?" I took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment of truth. "For years, Bennett, your mother has been undermining me, turning Sophie against me. I tried to tell you, but you never wanted to see it." Bennett's face crumpled. I didn't want to believe it. "Mom, how could you?" Claire's facade finally shattered. "I was trying to protect Sophie. Miranda's not good enough for this family. She never was." The room exploded into chaos. Bennett and Claire shouting, Sophie sobbing, and me standing in the middle of it all, feeling like my world was imploding. Suddenly, Sophie bolted for the door. Without thinking, I ran after her, my heart pounding. I caught up to her at the end of our driveway, pulling her into my arms. "Sophie, please," I begged, my voice breaking. "I love you so much. I'm so sorry for everything." She clung to me, her small body shaking with sobs. "I don't want to go with Grandma. I want to stay with you and Dad." I held her tighter, looking back at our house where Bennett and Claire's silhouettes were visible through the window, still arguing. In that moment, I knew we'd reached a turning point. Everything I'd fought for, everything I loved, hung in the balance. As I stood there, my daughter in my arms and my family in turmoil, I realized that the next few moments would determine the course of our lives forever. It was time to fight not just for myself, but for the future of our family, and this time I wouldn't back down. I stood in our driveway, holding Sophie close, when Bennett emerged from the house. His face was a storm of emotions, anger, confusion, and a dawning realization that seemed to age him before my eyes. "Miranda," he called, his voice hoarse. "Sophie, please come back inside. We need to talk about this as a family." I hesitated, looking down at Sophie. Her tear-stained face was resolute. "Only if Grandma leaves," she said, her voice small but firm. Bennett nodded, turning back to the house. We followed, my heart pounding with each step. As we entered the living room, Claire stood by the window, her posture rigid with defiance. "Claire," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice, "I think it's time for you to go." She whirled around, her eyes flashing. "You can't dismiss me from my son's house." "It's our house, Mom," Bennett interjected, his tone weary but determined. "And right now, we need to be alone with our daughter." Claire's face crumpled, the mask of superiority finally shattering. "Bennett, surely you can't believe these ridiculous accusations? Everything I've done has been for this family." "No, Grandma," Sophie spoke up, her voice stronger now. "It was for you. You wanted me to be like you, not like me or Mom." A heavy silence fell over the room. Claire looked from face to face, searching for an ally and finding none. Finally, her shoulders sagged in defeat. I never meant to cause such pain," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I only wanted the best for Sophie." "The best for Sophie is to have a mother who loves her unconditionally," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "Not one who tries to mold her into someone else's image." Bennett stepped forward, placing a hand on his mother's shoulder. "Mom, I think it's best if you give us some space. We'll call you when we're ready to talk again." Claire nodded, her usual poise completely shattered. As she gathered her things and left, the tension in the room seemed to leave with her. We sat together on the couch, Sophie nestled between Bennett and me. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Bennett broke the silence. "I owe you both an apology," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have seen what was happening. I should have protected you." I reached across Sophie to take his hand. "We all made mistakes, Bennett. What matters now is how we move forward." Sophie looked up at us, her eyes wide. "Are we going to be okay?" I hugged her close, feeling Bennett's arm encircle us both. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be happy." Over the next few weeks, we began the process of healing. Bennett and I had long, honest conversations about the years of tension and misunderstandings. We decided to start family therapy, determined to build a stronger foundation for our relationships. Sophie blossomed without the weight of Claire's expectations. We encouraged her to explore her own interests, whether that was music, art, or anything else that sparked her passion. As for me, I rediscovered my love for singing, not for accolades or approval, but for the pure joy it brought me. I started giving small performances at local cafes, with Bennett and Sophie cheering me on from the front row. Claire remained on the periphery of our lives. We didn't cut her off entirely, but we set clear boundaries. Over time, she began to see the damage her actions had caused. It was a slow process, but gradually she started to change. One year after that fateful confrontation, we hosted a small gathering at our home. As I stood in our backyard watching Bennett flip burgers on the grill and Sophie play with her cousins, I felt a profound sense of peace. Claire approached me, her demeanor hesitant. "Miranda," she said softly, "I want you to know, I'm truly sorry for everything. You're a wonderful mother and a talented woman. I was wrong to ever make you feel otherwise." I looked at her, seeing not the formidable adversary of the past year, but a woman who had lost her way and was trying to find it again. "Thank you, Claire," I replied. "That means a lot." As we stood there, an impromptu sing-along broke out among the kids. Without thinking, I joined in, my voice blending with theirs. To my surprise, Claire began to sing too. Our eyes met, and for the first time, I saw genuine warmth in her smile. In that moment, surrounded by the family we had fought so hard to protect and heal, I knew that we had not just survived the storm. We had emerged stronger, more loving, and more authentic than ever before. And that, I realized, was the sweetest victory of all.
The needle slips through the fabric with practiced ease, each stitch a tiny rebellion against the chaos swirling around me. The community center hums with excited chatter as dozens of women work on their quilts for the annual charity auction. I'm supposed to be teaching them, but right now, I can barely keep my own hands steady. "Brooklyn, honey, are you feeling all right?" Emma's voice cuts through my concentration. "You look pale." I force a smile, though the fluorescent lights above seem to spin. "I'm fine, just need some water." That's when I hear his voice, Michael, cutting through the background noise like a knife. He's not supposed to be here. This is my sanctuary, my escape. But there he stands in his perfectly pressed suit, phone in hand, talking loudly enough for everyone to hear. No, you don't understand. I never loved her. It was always about maintaining appearances. The whole marriage was a facade. The room goes quiet. Every head turns. The quilt slips from my fingers as my world narrows to a pinpoint. I try to stand, but my legs won't cooperate. The floor rushes up to meet me. "Someone help her!" Emma calls out. But Michael just laughs. That hollow, cruel sound I've grown to hate. Classic Brooklyn, always with the dramatics. This is exactly why I couldn't stay. Everything's always about her. I'm Brooklyn, and this is the moment my life shatters into 1,000 tiny pieces, like shards of broken glass scattered across the community center floor. Through the fog of humiliation, I hear gasps and whispers. Feel hands helping me up. See concerned faces swimming in and out of focus. But all I can focus on is Michael, standing there with that smirk I once found charming. "You didn't have to do this here," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where else would I find you? You're always at these pathetic little sewing circles." He waves his hand dismissively at the half-finished quilts. "Playing teacher to a bunch of housewives when you could have been something more. I tried to help you aim higher, but you never listened." Rachel, my best friend, steps between us. "Get out, Michael. You've done enough damage." "Damage!" He laughs again. "I've done her a favor. Now she can stop pretending she's happy playing small-town craftsman. Maybe she'll finally grow up." The room spins again, but this time it's not from weakness. It's rage. Pure, molten rage that burns through the shock and hurt. I grab the edge of the table, steadying myself. "You want to talk about pretending?" My voice comes out stronger than I expect. "How about pretending to be a decent human being for the past 8 years? He steps closer, lowering his voice. "Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. I've already arranged to sell the house. Your things will be packed and moved to your parents by Friday." "You what?" The words hit like physical blows. "That's our house. You can't." "Actually, I can. Check the paperwork, sweetheart. It's all perfectly legal." Emma appears at my side with a glass of water, but I wave it away. The room has stopped spinning. Everything is crystal clear now. "This isn't over," I tell him. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. "It was over long before today. I just finally had the courage to admit it." He turns to leave, then pauses. Oh, and Brooklyn? Don't bother trying to contest anything. My lawyers are better than any you could afford on a sewing teacher's salary. As he walks out, leaving stunned silence in his wake, something inside me shifts. The hurt is still there, but underneath it, something darker takes root. Something that whispers of justice and vengeance. I look around at the unfinished quilts, each one representing hours of careful planning and precise execution. Maybe it's time to apply those same skills to something besides sewing. After all, Michael always did underestimate what I could accomplish when I put my mind to it. Rachel squeezes my shoulder. What are you going to do? I pick up my fallen needle, testing its sharp point against my finger. I'm going to show him exactly what this small-town craftsman is capable of. The cardboard box feels heavier than it should as I carry it up my parents' driveway. 8 years of marriage condensed into 3 boxes. It seems impossible, yet here we are. My mother stands in the doorway, wringing her hands like she used to do when I was sick as a child. Let me help you with that, sweetheart, she says, reaching for the box. I've got it, Mom. The words come out sharper than intended. The last thing I need right now is to be treated like I'm fragile. Inside, Linda, my father, sits at the kitchen table, laptop open, fingers tapping against the wood in that familiar rhythm that means she's plotting something. She barely looks up as I set the box down. Have you checked your bank accounts? She asks. Linda, my mother warns. She just got here. And Michael's probably already 3 steps ahead of us, Susan. We need to act fast. The mention of his name makes my stomach clench. I sink into a chair, suddenly exhausted. I tried. He's changed all the passwords. Linda's typing intensifies. Of course he has. Classic first move. Did you know he's been meeting with Richard Carlton? The real estate agent? My head snaps up. How do you... I still have friends at the country club. She finally meets my eyes. He's listing properties that are in both your names. The room starts to spin again, but I force myself to stay upright. He can't do that without my signature. He can if he forged it. Linda's voice is cold, calculating, which, given his recent behavior, wouldn't surprise me. Stop it, both of you, my mother interrupts, setting down cups of tea none of us asked for. Brooklyn needs rest, not revenge plots. What I need is to not be talked about like I'm not here. I stand up, knocking against the table. Tea sloshes over the rim of the cups. And what I need is for someone to tell me how my entire life imploded in less than 24 hours. The silence that follows is deafening. My mother reaches for me, but I step back. I'll be in my old room, I mutter, heading for the stairs. Brooklyn, Linda calls after me. Rachel called while you were getting your things. She's worried about you. Of course she is. Everyone's worried about me. Poor, naive Brooklyn, who couldn't see what was happening right in front of her face. I'm halfway up the stairs when I hear them start arguing. She needs time to process, my mother insists. What she needs is to protect herself before he takes everything. Linda counters. You didn't see his face at that charity event, Susan. This isn't just about leaving her. He wants to destroy her. Their voices fade as I reach my childhood bedroom. Everything's exactly as I left it. Debate team trophies, old sewing projects, photos of... I rip the prom picture off the wall before I can think about it too much. My phone buzzes. Rachel. I'm fine, I answer before she can ask. No, you're not. Her counselor voice. But that's okay. What's not okay is you ghosting everyone who cares about you. I sit on the edge of my bed, running my fingers over the familiar quilt pattern. I just need... If you say time, I'm coming over there right now. She pauses. Actually, I'm coming over anyway. Your mom called me. Of course she did. I lie back, staring at the ceiling. Did she tell you about the real estate agent too? No, but Emma did. Apparently Michael's been busy. He's already got 3 properties listed. Something inside me snaps. 3? We only own 2 properties. Rachel's silence speaks volumes. Unless... The realization hits like a punch to the gut. He's selling my studio, isn't he? The one I inherited from Grandma? Brooklyn? I'll call you back. I hang up before she can protest, practically flying down the stairs. Linda's already pulling up property records when I reach the kitchen. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. He can't sell that studio. It's not even in his name. No, Linda agrees, turning the laptop so I can see. But 3 months ago, you signed it over to him. Or at least, someone signed your name. The forgery is good. Really good. But the signature isn't mine. My mother touches my shoulder. Honey, maybe we should... Don't, I cut her off, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Don't tell me to calm down. Don't tell me to take the high road. I look at Linda. You still have contacts at the DA's office? She nods, a small, satisfied smile playing at her lips. Good. Because Michael's right about one thing. This isn't over, not by a long shot. The lock to my grandmother's studio clicks open, and my heart stops. Everything's wrong. The familiar scent of fabric and creativity is gone, replaced by the sterile smell of cleaning products. The walls are bare, no inspiration boards, no vintage patterns, no photographs of 3 generations of sewists. They cleared it out yesterday. A voice startles me. I turn to find a man standing in the doorway, tall, dark-haired, wearing paint-splattered jeans. I'm Jason. I work in the studio next door. My fingers curl into fists. Who cleared it out? Some guys in a moving truck. Had paperwork and everything? He hesitates. Your husband was supervising. The word husband burns like acid. Ex-husband. Right. Sorry. Jason steps inside, hands in his pockets. They took everything except this. He reaches behind a radiator and pulls out a small wooden box. I grabbed it when they weren't looking. Seemed important. My grandmother's button box. The last thing she gave me before she died. Inside, generations of stories told through salvaged buttons, each one carefully labeled with its history. Thank you, I whisper, clutching the box. My phone buzzes. Linda. Brooklyn, where are you? The realtor's showing the studio in 20 minutes. I'm already here. My voice sounds strange, distant. It's empty. What? That's impossible. The showing isn't until... She stops. Don't move. I'm calling our lawyer. But I'm barely listening. Through the window, I can see Michael across the street, talking to a couple in business attire. He's wearing that fake smile, the one I used to think was charming. He's here, I tell Linda. With buyers. Brooklyn, don't! I end the call and stride across the street, the button box still in my hands. Jason calls after me, but I keep walking. Prime location, completely renovated, Michael's saying. The previous tenant was running some kind of craft business, but... Craft business? The box feels heavy in my hands. Is that what you're calling my grandmother's legacy? The couple looks uncomfortable. Michael's smile doesn't waver. Brooklyn, this is a private showing. Private? Like how you privately forged my signature? Or how you privately cleared out 30 years of family history? Maybe we should come back another time, the woman suggests. No need. Michael's voice hardens. My wife is just having trouble accepting reality. Ex-wife, I correct him. And reality is that you're trying to sell property you don't own. Check the paperwork. He pulls out a folder. Everything's legal. Including this? I open the button box and pull out a small envelope. Grandma's original deed, naming me as sole owner, the one you couldn't find to forge. His smile slips just for a second. The couple exchanges glances. We'll be in touch, the man says quickly, and they hurry away. Michael waits until they're gone before his facade cracks. You're making a mistake. No, your mistake was thinking I'd just roll over and let you take everything. Everything? He laughs, but it's ugly. You want to talk about taking? How about 8 years of my life, playing along with your small-town dreams when I could have been something more? You could have left any time. And walk away with nothing? He steps closer. I earned this. Every fake smile at your silly sewing circles, every mind-numbing dinner with your parents, every moment pretending your pathetic little ambitions were enough. I earned this studio. Jason appears beside me. Everything okay here? Michael's eyes narrow. Mind your own business. The studio is my business, Jason says calmly, since I'm buying it. I turn to him, startled. Michael laughs again. Nice try, but it's already sold. Actually, Jason pulls out his phone, I just got confirmation from the bank. The sale's been blocked pending investigation of fraudulent documentation. Michael's face goes white. Also, Jason continues, I have security footage of yesterday's moving crew. Interesting timing, clearing out a property before it's legally sold. My phone buzzes again. Linda, probably with the lawyer. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I feel steady. You should go, Michael. My voice is quiet but firm. And whatever scheme you're running, whatever you think you're entitled to, it ends now. He opens his mouth, closes it. For a moment, I see something flicker in his eyes. Fear, maybe. Then he turns and walks away, his expensive shoes clicking against the pavement. Thank you, I tell Jason, for the button box, and don't thank me yet. He hands me a business card. I think we need to talk about what else your ex-husband's been up to, and I'm pretty sure you'll want to hear this. Jason's revelations about Michael sit like stones in my stomach as I drive to Rachel's office. The familiar counseling services sign offers no comfort today. Through the window, I can see her with a client, the same steady, compassionate presence she's always been. I check my phone again. 3 missed calls from Linda, 2 from Susan, a text from Emma about tomorrow's sewing class, and 1 email from Michael's lawyer, probably another threat wrapped in legal jargon. Rachel opens her door, ushering out her client. When she sees me, her professional smile falters. You look like hell. Thanks. I follow her inside, sinking into the worn leather chair. Did you know Michael's been monitoring my bank accounts? She closes the door carefully. How did you find out? Jason showed me the evidence. Michael's been tracking every transaction since before we separated. He knew exactly when to move against the studio because he was watching my finances. Rachel sits down, her counselor mask slipping. Brooklyn, don't. I hold up a hand. Don't tell me to take the high road. He's been planning this for months, maybe years. That's not what I was going to say. She leans forward. I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. My chest tightens. What? Michael came to see me, professionally, 6 months ago. The words hang in the air like smoke. I stand up, my legs unsteady. You're his therapist? Was. For 3 sessions. She won't meet my eyes. I terminated the relationship when I realized who he was. 3 sessions. I laugh, but it sounds wrong. While you were helping me plan my future, you were counseling my husband? Ex-husband, she corrects softly. And I couldn't tell you. Ethics. Ethics. The word tastes bitter. He's destroying everything I care about, and you're worried about ethics. Brooklyn, sit down, please. She waits until I do. There's more. During those sessions, Michael talked about things, plans. I couldn't say anything directly, but I tried to warn you. Memory hits like a slap. All those careful questions about financial independence, the suggestions to document everything, the urgent recommendations to change my passwords. You knew. My voice sounds distant. You knew what he was going to do. I suspected, but I couldn't. Break confidentiality. Right. I stand again, steadier this time. Funny how everyone who claims to care about me keeps having very good reasons for letting Michael win. That's not fair. No? I move to the door. What's not fair is finding out my best friend chose professional ethics over warning me that my life was about to implode. Where are you going? To do what I should have done from the start. My hand tightens on the doorknob. Stop trusting people who say they're protecting me and start protecting myself. Brooklyn, wait! She grabs my arm. Whatever you're thinking about doing, remember who you are. I look at her hand, then her face. That's the problem, Rachel. Everyone seems to think they know exactly who I am. The nice girl, the understanding wife, the forgiving friend. I pull away. Maybe it's time to show them how wrong they are. Don't let him turn you into something you're not. Too late. I open the door. He already did that. Now I'm just deciding what I want to become instead. Outside, my phone buzzes again. Linda. This time I answer. Jason just called me, she says without preamble. We need to talk about what he found. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I start my car. And Linda, bring every file you have from when you worked with Michael's company. Every contract, every memo, everything. Brooklyn, it's time to stop playing defense. I pull out of the parking lot, not looking back at Rachel's office. Michael wants to destroy what I care about? Fine. Let's see how he likes having everything he values stripped away too. The sun is setting as I drive, casting long shadows across the road. Somewhere in the distance, storm clouds are gathering. Perfect weather for what's coming. Because Michael was right about one thing. I have been playing small. Following rules. Trying to be nice. But now I'm ready to show him exactly what happens when you back someone into a corner and expect them to break. Time to start weaving a different kind of pattern, one stitch at a time. Linda spreads the files across her dining room table like she's dealing cards for a high-stakes game. Each document represents another piece of Michael's carefully constructed facade, and with every page I turn, my anger burns colder, more focused. He didn't just monitor your accounts, Linda says, tapping a spreadsheet. He was systematically moving money through shell companies for months. I pick up another document, recognizing Michael's signature. Using my studio as collateral. On the house. Jason leans against the doorframe, arms crossed. But that's not the interesting part. What is? He pulls out his phone, showing me an email chain. These companies? They all trace back to Richard Carlton. The real estate agent? My hands clench around the paper I'm holding. He's been working with Michael this whole time? Better? Jason's smile is sharp. He's Michael's silent partner in a development project. They're buying up properties all over town, including your grandmother's building. The pieces click together like a perfect seam. They're planning to demolish the historic district. Linda's typing furiously on her laptop. That would destroy half the local businesses. Including Emma's shop. My voice sounds strange, even to me. And the community center. Brooklyn. Susan appears in the doorway, concern etched on her face. Your sewing class is starting in 20 minutes. I'd forgotten. Tuesday night beginners class, where I teach people how to create something beautiful from scattered pieces. The irony isn't lost on me. Cancel it, Linda suggests, not looking up from her screen. No. I gather my things, an idea taking shape. That's exactly where I need to be. Jason raises an eyebrow. You're going to teach a sewing class now? I'm going to start pulling threads. I check my phone. 3 messages from Emma about tonight's attendance. Most of my students are connected to the historic district somehow, and they all love to talk. Understanding dawns on Linda's face. Information gathering. More than that. I shoulder my bag. Michael and Richard think they're so clever, buying up properties in secret. But they forgot something important. What's that? In a small town, reputation is everything. I head for the door, then pause. Mom, can you call Rachel? Tell her I need her to stop by the class tonight. After what she did? Susan frowns. Because of what she did. My smile feels dangerous. She wants to make things right. This is her chance. The community center is buzzing when I arrive. Emma meets me at the door, talking fast about missing supplies and changed schedules, but I barely hear her. I'm watching the women setting up their machines, sharing gossip and laughs, completely unaware that their businesses, their community, is about to be bulldozed. Ladies! I call out, and the room quiets. Change of plans tonight. Instead of starting that quilt pattern, I want to tell you a story about greed and betrayal, and 2 men who think they can destroy our town without anyone noticing. Rachel slips in the back door as I begin speaking. Her counselor mask is gone, replaced by something harder, more determined. She catches my eye and nods once. Message received. By the time I finish talking, the room is silent except for the hum of tension. These women, shop owners, mothers, pillars of the community, they understand exactly what's at stake. What can we do? Emma asks, her voice tight. I pull out my phone, showing them the evidence Jason gathered. We start spreading the truth, carefully, strategically, one conversation at a time. Like stitches in a quilt, someone says. Exactly. I look around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. Michael thinks he can erase us because we're just small-town craftspeople. Richard believes we'll roll over and sell because we don't understand real business. Rachel steps forward. They don't know what's coming, do they? No. I start distributing copies of the documents. They don't. As the women begin planning, their voices rising with purpose and anger, I feel something shift inside me. This isn't just about my revenge anymore. It's about protecting something bigger than myself. My phone buzzes. A text from Michael. We need to talk. Dinner tomorrow? I type back one word. Yes. Because sometimes the best way to destroy someone is to let them think they're winning. One careful stitch at a time, until the pattern is complete, and it's too late for them to see what you've been weaving all along. The annual town hall meeting buzzes with nervous energy. Every seat is filled, and I can feel the weight of expectant gazes as I clutch my folder of evidence. Michael stands at the podium, his practiced smile never wavering as he presents the Downtown Revitalization Project. Progress requires change, he's saying, gesturing to Richard's sleek architectural renderings. Our historic district has charm, but it's holding us back from real economic growth. Linda squeezes my hand. Now, she whispers. I stand, my legs steadier than I expected. I have some questions about this project. Michael's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. Of course, Brooklyn, always supporting local interests. Actually, I'm more interested in these. I start distributing copies of documents. Bank statements showing systematic fraud, forged signatures, shell companies used to hide property acquisitions. The room erupts in murmurs. Michael's face hardens as he flips through the papers. These are confidential business documents, he says smoothly. Obtained illegally, I might add. Nothing illegal about following a paper trail of fraud, Jason calls from the back. But Michael's smiling again, and something in his expression makes my stomach drop. Speaking of paper trails, he says, pulling out his phone, I have some interesting documents of my own. Emails, actually, between Brooklyn and various community members, planning to deliberately sabotage a legitimate business venture. The room goes quiet. I feel the shift in the air as people start looking at their copies of my evidence differently. That's not, I start, but he cuts me off. Conspiracy, defamation, tortious interference. He lists them like he's reading a shopping list, all documented in black and white. Your grandmother taught you to sew, Brooklyn, but I taught you how to keep records. Rachel stands up. Those emails were private conversations. Between my therapy client and other community members, Michael interrupts, which makes them privileged information that you illegally shared, Rachel. Interesting ethical position for a counselor. The room erupts again, but this time the voices are angry, confused, accusatory. I see Emma shrinking in her seat, other business owners avoiding my eyes. This isn't about emails, I say, fighting to keep my voice steady. It's about protecting our community. From what? Richard Carlton steps forward. From investment? Growth? Or just from your ex-husband moving on? You forged my signature, I snap. Prove it. Michael's voice is gentle, reasonable. Without using illegally obtained documents or privileged communications, prove any of it. The silence that follows is deafening. I look around the room, seeing doubt creep across faces that minutes ago were supportive. Linda starts to stand, but Michael's next words freeze her in place. Oh, and Linda, the board of directors would love to discuss how you accessed corporate files after your retirement. Tomorrow morning, perhaps? My carefully woven plan unravels thread by thread. Every ally I counted on is compromised, every piece of evidence tainted. Michael has turned my own tactics against me, making me look like exactly what he accused me of being: small, bitter, vindictive. This meeting is adjourned, the mayor announces, looking uncomfortable. Pending legal review of all materials presented. People file out quickly, avoiding eye contact. Rachel touches my shoulder as she passes, but doesn't speak. Even Jason slips away, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry about this," Michael says quietly, gathering his things. "But you forced my hand. Again. How long?" My voice sounds hollow. "How long were you planning this?" "Since the day you chose that studio over the job offer I arranged in the city." He straightens his tie. "Small towns breed small minds, Brooklyn. I tried to help you think bigger. By destroying everything I care about? By showing you what real power looks like." He steps closer, his voice for my ears only. "Did you really think your little sewing circle could outmaneuver me? That your community would choose you over progress?" I stand there, surrounded by scattered papers and abandoned chairs, watching everything I thought I knew about strength and justice crumble around me. The historic district, my grandmother's legacy, my own reputation, all hanging by threads I can't seem to gather. "The demolition starts next week," Michael says from the doorway. "You might want to find a new hobby. I hear knitting is therapeutic." The door closes behind him, leaving me alone with the echoes of my failed revenge and one haunting question. What happens when the weapon you choose to fight with becomes the very thing that destroys you? The demolition crew arrives at dawn. I watch from across the street as they set up barriers around my grandmother's studio, their yellow vests bright against the gray morning. Michael stands with Richard, checking something on a tablet, looking more exhausted than triumphant. I grip my coffee cup tighter, remembering Rachel's last text. "He's been in therapy for months. Severe anxiety disorder. It might explain things." The cup trembles. I set it down. A small crowd gathers as the crew starts removing windows. Emma appears beside me, then Linda, then others from my sewing class. No one speaks. We just watch as they strip away decades of memories, piece by piece. "Quite a turnout," Michael says, suddenly behind me. "Come to witness progress?" I turn. The shadows under his eyes are deeper than yesterday, his usual polish cracking at the edges. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" "About the anxiety, the therapy." His face hardens. "Rachel had no right." "No, she didn't. Just like you had no right to forge my signature or steal my inheritance." "I didn't steal anything." His voice rises slightly. "I saved you from yourself, from this." He gestures at the building. "This obsession with living small." A crash makes us both jump. The first wall starts coming down. "You know what's funny?" I keep my voice steady. "I actually thought I was the weak one. That you were somehow stronger, smarter, better at life than me." "Brooklyn." "But strong people don't need to destroy others to feel powerful, do they?" His laugh sounds hollow. "Says the woman who tried to destroy me at the town hall." "No." I step closer. "I tried to expose the truth. You're the one who made it about destruction." Another crash. More of the wall crumbles. "The truth?" He runs a hand through his disheveled hair. "The truth is I couldn't breathe in this town. Every day watching you play house with your little sewing circles, pretending it was enough. It was enough for me. It was killing me." The words explode from him. The crowd stirs, watching. The panic attack started 3 years ago. Every morning, waking up knowing I'd waste another day in this cage you called home. The demolition pauses. Even the workers are watching now. "You could have talked to me," I say softly. "Like you talked to me? Before turning our private life into community gossip? That's different." "Is it?" His voice cracks. "You wanted revenge because I hurt you. I wanted freedom because this place was suffocating me. Tell me, Brooklyn, which of us is really the villain here?" The question hangs in the air like dust from the demolition. I look at the half-destroyed studio, then at the crowd. Linda's fierce protectiveness, Emma's quiet strength, even Rachel's complicated loyalty. All the threads that make up a life I chose, not settled for. Neither of us, I finally say. Or maybe both of us. But this? I gesture at the demolition. This isn't freedom, Michael. It's just another cage you're building for yourself. He stares at me for a long moment. Something shifts in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or resignation. Stop the demolition, he calls out suddenly. Richard steps forward. Michael, the permits! I said stop. His composure cracks completely. All of it. The development, the sales, everything. I can't do this anymore. The workers power down their equipment. The silence feels deafening. It won't fix anything, I tell him quietly. No. He looks at me with eyes I barely recognize. Vulnerable, almost afraid. But maybe that's not the point anymore. As the crowd disperses and the workers pack up, I stand in front of my grandmother's damaged studio. The wall can be rebuilt, but some things, trust, innocence, simple certainties, will stay broken. Michael pauses before leaving. I really did love you, you know, just not enough to become small. And I loved you, I reply, just not enough to become something I'm not. He nods once and walks away. I watch him go, feeling neither victory nor defeat, just the weight of understanding that sometimes the greatest act of revenge is choosing not to take it at all. Behind me, Emma touches my shoulder. What now? I look at the studio, its broken wall like an open wound, but also like a window to something new. Now, I say, we rebuild, but differently this time. The renovated studio smells of fresh paint and possibility. Sunlight streams through new windows, catching dust motes that dance like scattered memories. I run my hand along the workbench my grandmother installed decades ago, the only piece we managed to save from the demolition. The contractor says we can open next week, Emma says, setting down a box of supplies, though I still think Phoenix Studio is a bit on the nose. Sometimes obvious is good. I straighten a framed photograph. The original studio on opening day. 3 generations of women standing proud. Speaking of obvious, have you seen Jason lately? Emma's expression tightens. Not since he tried to buy the building out from under us. Funny how he disappeared once his development plans fell through. Not funny, strategic. I check my phone. Another missed call from Rachel. Some people are only interested in broken things they can profit from. The bell above the door chimes. Linda enters, carrying familiar papers. The final transfer documents, she says, laying them on the workbench. Once you sign, the studio's officially yours again. No partners, no strings. I pick up the pen, then pause. Have you heard from Michael? He's in Seattle. Linda's voice is carefully neutral. Started therapy again, apparently. The pen feels heavy in my hand. I think about Michael's last words about becoming small, about the way revenge can shrink your world even when you think you're fighting to expand it. Brooklyn? Emma touches my arm. The afternoon class is waiting. I look through the interior window to the classroom space. Women of all ages are setting up their machines, chatting, sharing stories. Not just a sewing circle anymore, but a business incubator program. My grandmother's legacy reimagined. 1 minute, I tell her. I sign the papers quickly, then reach for my grandmother's button box. Inside, nestled among generations of salvaged buttons, lies a small key. What's that for? Linda asks. The future. I hand her the box. Would you add these to the memory wall? All except this one. I hold up a pearl button, slightly cracked but still beautiful. This one goes back to its owner. The afternoon sun is warm as I walk the familiar path to Rachel's office. She opens the door before I knock, surprise flickering across her face. I was just about to call again, she says. I know. I hold out the button. Remember this? From your wedding dress fitting? She takes it, recognition softening her features. The one that popped off. You said you'd fix it, but then everything fell apart. I step back. Some things can't be fixed, Rachel, but they can be remembered, honored, and then let go. Understanding passes between us, years of friendship distilled into a single moment. "The studio reopening," she says. "Should I?" "Come, don't come. It's your choice." I turn to leave. Just like it's my choice to stop letting broken things define me. Back at the studio, the class is in full swing. Emma's teaching a new technique, her voice confident and clear. Linda and Susan sit in the back, working on a joint project for the first time in years. The memory wall gleams with buttons and photographs, each one a story of something lost or found or transformed. I take my place at the front workbench, the same spot where my grandmother taught me that every torn seam is an opportunity to create something stronger. The students look up expectantly, machines humming, threads ready. "Today," I tell them, "we're going to learn about reconstruction, about taking something damaged and making it not just whole again, but different. Better." A new student raises her hand. "What if we make a mistake?" I think about Michael, about Jason, about all the tangled threads of revenge and redemption that led me here. About how sometimes the strongest patterns emerge from unexpected breaks in the design. In sewing, like in life, I say, threading my needle, there are no mistakes, only alterations that show us who we really are. The late afternoon light catches the memory wall, making the buttons shimmer like stars. Each one a small, imperfect circle, like the path I took to get here, like the journey from vengeance to understanding, like the endless cycle of breaking and mending that makes up a life. I begin to sew, adding my own stitch to the endless pattern.
The crystal wine glass shattered in my hand as the manila envelope hit the mahogany dining table. Blood trickled down my wrist, but I barely felt it. The pain was nothing compared to the humiliation burning through my chest as 20 pairs of eyes fixed on me. I'm Olive, and this was supposed to be just another Blake family Thanksgiving dinner. "What is this?" My voice came out steadier than I expected, though my fingers trembled as I reached for the envelope. "Divorce papers." Emerson's voice was flat, practiced. He'd rehearsed this moment, probably with his mother Eleanor watching approvingly from her throne-like chair at the head of the table. I thought it would be better to do this here, with family present. Better for whom? The question died in my throat as Cora, my sister-in-law, let out a poorly disguised snicker. She'd been waiting for this moment since the day Emerson and I got married. "You're serving me divorce papers at Thanksgiving dinner?" The words tasted like acid. The turkey and cranberry sauce on my plate suddenly looked obscene. "Well, darling," Eleanor's voice dripped with false sympathy, "we thought it would be easier this way. The family could provide emotional support." Allie, my best friend who'd insisted on coming with me this year, grabbed my hand under the table. Thank God she was here. "Emotional support?" I echoed, watching blood drip onto the pristine white tablecloth. "Like the emotional support you showed when you called my art glorified finger painting last Christmas." "Oh, come now," Cora chimed in, wine sloshing in her glass. "Let's not pretend your little hobby was ever going to amount to anything. Remember that gallery showing where nobody bought a single piece?" The room erupted in cruel laughter. Even the cousins I thought were on my side joined in. I looked at Emerson, searching for any trace of the man who'd once defended my passion for art, who'd helped me set up my studio in the guest house of this very estate. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I think what everyone's trying to say," Eleanor continued, dabbing her mouth with a napkin, "is that it's time to face reality. You're not cut out for this family, Olive. We need someone more substantial." My hand brushed against my purse, where a folded document had been sitting for months. The deed to this very house, the Blake family estate, transferred to my name in a moment of drunken generosity by Emerson on our 5th anniversary. He'd forgotten about it by morning, but I'd quietly filed the paperwork. "You're right, Eleanor." I stood up slowly, letting the blood drip freely onto her precious tablecloth. "I'm not cut out for this family. I'm better than it." "Excuse me?" Emerson finally looked at me, his face flushing red. "Allie, would you mind driving me to the emergency room? I seem to have cut myself." I turned to the stunned faces around the table. "Oh, and Eleanor? You might want to get the tablecloth cleaned quickly. Bloodstains are such a nightmare to remove, almost as difficult as eviction notices." "Eviction notices?" Eleanor's fork clattered against her plate. What are you talking about? I smiled, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Enjoy the turkey. It might be your last meal in this dining room. The silence that followed me out was deafening. As Allie helped me to her car, I heard the chaos erupting behind us. Raised voices, slamming doors, Emerson calling my name. Holy shit, Allie whispered as we pulled away from the estate. Are you okay? I watched the mansion shrink in the side mirror, its windows glowing warm and inviting. A facade, just like everything else about the Blakes. No, I answered honestly. But I will be. What did you mean about eviction notices? I pulled out the deed with my good hand, careful not to get blood on it. Remember when Emerson got drunk last year and started talking about how this house should belong to someone who actually appreciates its history? Allie's eyes widened as she glanced at the document. No way. Yes way. He signed over the deed that night. I've been sitting on it, wondering if I should tell him. I looked down at my bleeding hand. I guess now I know what to do with it. What are you thinking? The first genuine smile of the evening spread across my face. I'm thinking this place would make an excellent art gallery. After all, Eleanor always said this house needed more culture. As we drove toward the hospital, I felt something shift inside me. The humiliation was still there, but it was being replaced by something else, determination. They wanted to break me? Fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. Sometimes the best art comes from broken things. 7 stitches, I announced, holding up my bandaged hand as I walked into Allie's apartment. The doctor said I'm lucky I didn't sever any tendons. Lucky isn't exactly the word I'd use for anything that happened today. Allie handed me a glass of wine, in a plastic cup this time. Your phone's been blowing up, by the way. 23 missed calls from Emerson. I sank into her plush couch, exhausted. Let him sweat. So, are we going to talk about the nuclear bomb you're sitting on? Allie curled up in her armchair, tucking her feet under her. That deed is serious business, Olive. I know. I took a long sip of wine. I already called Riley. The lawyer? When? From the hospital. She's coming over first thing tomorrow morning. I pulled out my phone and finally looked at the messages. Oh, this is Rich. Listen to what Cora just sent. How dare you embarrass our family like this? After everything we've done for you? Allie snorted. Everything they've done for you? Like what? Criticize your art? Exclude you from family photos? Make snide comments about your clothes? The memories flooded back unbidden. Remember last summer's garden party? When Eleanor told all her friends I was the cleaning lady because she was embarrassed to introduce me as her daughter-in-law? God, yes. And Emerson just stood there pretending not to hear. He always just stood there. My voice cracked slightly. 5 years of marriage, and he never once truly stood up for me. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Allie peeked through the peephole and cursed. It's Emerson. Olive! His voice carried through the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk. I shook my head at Allie, who called out, She doesn't want to see you, Emerson. Go home. This is ridiculous. Something thudded against the door, probably his fist. You can't just threaten my family's home. That deed was a mistake, and you know it. I walked to the door, my heart pounding. A mistake? Like serving me divorce papers at Thanksgiving dinner was a mistake? That's different. I was trying to... To what? Humiliate me? Congratulations, mission accomplished. I pressed my bandaged hand against the door. But you know what's funny? While you were all laughing at my failed art career, I was quietly building something else. Something you didn't notice because you were too busy being ashamed of me. What are you talking about? My paintings might not sell, Emerson, but my art restoration business is doing just fine. I've been saving every penny, waiting for the right opportunity. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. Guess what? You just handed it to me. The silence on the other side of the door was deafening. Go home, I said finally. Talk to your lawyer. I'll be talking to mine. His footsteps retreated slowly, and I slumped against the wall. Art restoration business? Allie raised an eyebrow. Since when? Remember Francisco, my old art professor? I pulled out my phone and showed her my business website. He's been mentoring me for the past year. Turns out rich people will pay a fortune to have their family heirlooms restored. I've been working out of his studio. Allie scrolled through the site, her eyes widening. These are incredible. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because they never asked. I took my phone back. They were so convinced I was a failure, they never bothered to look closer. Even Emerson stopped asking about my hobby months ago. My phone buzzed with a text from Riley. Got your message. Reviewed the deed. It's ironclad. Meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss options. Allie read the message over my shoulder. What exactly are you planning? I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. That house has been a symbol of everything I'm not supposed to be. Everything the Blakes said I could never achieve. So I'm going to turn it into exactly what I am. An art gallery? Not just any gallery. I turned back to her, feeling more certain with every word. A restoration studio and gallery, a place where broken things become beautiful again, where the past gets a second chance to shine. They're going to fight you on this, Allie warned. Let them. I held up my bandaged hand. They've already drawn first blood. Now it's my turn. My phone buzzed again. Eleanor this time. You ungrateful little nobody. You have no idea what you're getting into. I showed the message to Allie, who whistled low. You know what this means, right? Yeah. I typed out a quick response. Actually, Eleanor, I do. See you in court. Then I blocked her number, and for the first time since that envelope hit the table, I felt truly free. Francisco's studio smelled like linseed oil and possibility. Morning light streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced around his latest restoration project, a Baroque frame that had seen better centuries. So, he said, setting down his tools, you finally told them to go to hell. Not in those exact words. I traced my fingers along the frame's intricate carvings, but close enough. Good. Francisco pulled up 2 stools. Now, tell me about this gallery idea of yours. I'd spent the morning with Riley, going over legal strategies. Now I needed something different, artistic vision. I pulled out my tablet and showed Francisco the floor plans of the Blake estate. The main hall could be the primary gallery space, I explained, zooming in. Those windows face north, perfect lighting. And look at these side rooms. Stop. Francisco held up a paint-stained hand. You're thinking too small. What do you mean? You're planning a gallery, yes? But what are you going to fill it with? He gestured around his studio. These restoration projects we do, they're not just about fixing broken art. They're about bringing stories back to life. Understanding dawned. You think I should showcase the restoration process itself? Exactly. His eyes lit up. Imagine, one wing shows the before pieces, damaged, forgotten works. Another shows the restoration in progress. And the main gallery? That's where you display the finished pieces in all their glory. Like a metaphor, I whispered. Breaking something down to build it back stronger. Now you're thinking like an artist. Francisco walked to a cabinet and pulled out a dusty canvas. Remember this? My throat tightened. It was my first attempted restoration, a landscape I'd nearly ruined before Francisco taught me the proper techniques. You were so afraid of making mistakes, he continued. But look at it now. The painting gleamed in the morning light, its colors more vibrant than the original artist had ever achieved. That's what I want, I said suddenly. I want to show people that broken things don't have to stay broken. That sometimes the restoration is more beautiful than the original. Francisco's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Speaking of the Blakes, Eleanor's been calling me all morning. What? Why? Trying to convince me to talk you out of this. He chuckled. She offered to commission 3 pieces. What did you tell her? I told her I don't work with people who mock my best student. He squeezed my shoulder. Now, let's talk about your opening exhibition. My phone rang, Emerson's number. I declined the call. He's persistent, Francisco observed. He's desperate. The family lawyer probably told them how solid the deed is. I pulled out my sketchbook. But enough about them. I want to show you some ideas. Francisco stopped me again. Before you do, I have something for you. He disappeared into his storage room and returned with a large, covered canvas. I've been saving this for the right moment. He pulled off the sheet, and I gasped. It was one of my paintings from 2 years ago, a self-portrait I'd abandoned after Cora called it amateurish at a family dinner. You kept it? I restored it, he corrected. Added some touches here and there. Look closely. I stepped forward. The woman in the painting, me, stood in a shaft of light, her face half in shadow. But Francisco had added something, a subtle crown of gold leaf in her hair, barely visible except when the light hit it just right. You always had a queen inside you, he said softly. You just needed the right light to see it. Tears pricked my eyes. This has to be in the opening exhibition. Of course, but not alone. He grabbed a fresh canvas and set it on an easel. I think it's time for a companion piece. The queen claiming her throne, perhaps? My phone buzzed again. A text from Riley. Eleanor's lawyer reached out. They want to negotiate. I showed Francisco the message. He handed me a brush. What do you want to do? He asked. I dipped the brush in deep royal purple. I want to paint. Good answer. He set up his own canvas beside mine. Remember what I taught you about composition? The eye needs somewhere to land. And about color? Sometimes the boldest statement is the quietest shade. And about revenge? I paused, brush hovering over canvas. You never taught me about revenge. Yes, I did. He smiled. Every time we restored a painting that someone had given up on, every time we proved them wrong with beauty instead of anger. I looked at the blank canvas, then at my bandaged hand, then at the text from Riley. Finally, I looked at Francisco. Teach me more, I said. And as the morning light filled the studio, we began to paint my revenge. Not in blacks and reds, but in colors that would make even Eleanor Blake wish she'd seen my worth sooner. The cafe was exactly halfway between my apartment and the Blake estate, neutral territory. Emerson sat at a corner table, his usual crisp appearance slightly rumpled. 3 days of stubble shadowed his jaw, and his tie hung loose around his neck. You look terrible, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Olive. He straightened up. Thank you for coming. You said it was important. I kept my bandaged hand visible on the table between us. A reminder. The waitress approached, but Emerson waved her away. I need you to stop this madness. Mother is beside herself. The house has been in our family for generations. Interesting. I tilted my head. Is that what you told yourself when you planned to serve me divorce papers at Thanksgiving dinner? Mother would approve of this? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. That was poorly handled. Poorly handled? I laughed, drawing looks from nearby tables. You humiliated me in front of your entire family. They laughed, Emerson. They laughed while I bled. I never meant what? For me to fight back? For me to be anything more than the disappointing artist wife you could never quite bring yourself to defend? He reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back. I have an offer, he said, switching tactics. The family is willing to buy the house from you. Name your price. Of course, everything was always about money with the Blakes. Not interested. Be reasonable, Olive. What are you going to do with a house that size? Turn it into some sort of... He waved his hand dismissively. Art space? Actually, yes. I pulled out my tablet and showed him Francisco's preliminary designs. The main hall will be the gallery. The east wing will house the restoration studio. The west wing will be... Stop! Emerson pinched the bridge of his nose. This is ridiculous. You can't just... Can't what? Succeed? Make something of myself? I leaned forward. Or is it that you can't stand the thought of me turning your precious family estate into something that actually matters? Mother will never allow this. Mother doesn't have a choice. I stood up. Neither do you. He grabbed my wrist. Wait, please. There's something else. I sat back down, curious despite myself. Cora's pregnant, he said quietly. She and her husband were supposed to move into the estate next month. It's tradition. The next generation always raises their children there. The news hit like a physical blow. Cora, who'd made my life hell for 5 years, was going to have everything she'd ever wanted. That's not my problem. Olive, please, if not for me, then for who? The family that never accepted me? The sister-in-law who mocked every piece of art I ever created? I pulled my wrist free. You know what tradition I'm starting? Being the first person in that house who actually creates something instead of just inheriting it. His face hardened. You're making a mistake. No, Emerson. I made a mistake 5 years ago when I married you. I stood again. Tell Cora congratulations. I'm sure she'll raise her child to be just as kind and accepting as the rest of you. This isn't over, he called after me as I walked away. Actually, it is. I turned back one last time. Oh, and you might want to warn your mother. The contractors start next week. I'd hate for all that construction noise to disturb her afternoon tea. Outside, I called Allie. How'd it go? She asked. About as well as expected. I started walking, needing to move. Did you know Cora's pregnant? What? No way. Yeah, apparently I'm destroying some grand family tradition by not letting them raise the next generation of entitled Blakes in that house. So what are you going to do? I stopped at a red light, watching people rush past. I'm going to create something beautiful in that house. Something that lasts. And maybe, years from now, Cora's kid will walk into my gallery and see that there's more to life than tradition and appearances. They're not going to make this easy, Allie warned. Good. I touched my healing hand. The best art never comes easy. My phone buzzed with a text from Francisco. Started working on the crown piece. Come see. I have to go, I told Allie. Time to make some art. Give 'em hell, she said. I smiled, already picturing Eleanor's face when the construction crews arrived. No, I'm going to give them beauty. That'll hurt them more. The light turned green, and I crossed the street, leaving the cafe and Emerson's desperate pleas behind. Ahead of me lay Francisco's studio, and beyond that, a future I was finally ready to paint for myself. The sound of power tools echoed through the Blake estate as workers transformed the space. I stood in what used to be Eleanor's precious formal dining room, now stripped bare except for my easel and canvases. The lighting system will be installed by Friday, the contractor said, checking his tablet. And the gallery rails are ready to go up as soon as we finish prepping the walls. Perfect. I stepped over cables and drop cloths to examine the north wall. And the security system? State of the art. Nobody's getting in here without your say-so. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the window, I saw Eleanor standing at the front gate, gesturing wildly at the security guard. Speaking of which, I sighed. Excuse me a moment. I walked out to find Eleanor in full battle mode, designer handbag clutched like a weapon. This is outrageous, she shrieked. That rent-a-cop won't let me into my own home. Not your home anymore, I reminded her. And his name is Marcus. He's former military and deserves respect. You, she sputtered, face reddening. You're destroying everything. Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? Actually, I do. I gestured to the dumpster filled with her precious Victorian wallpaper. I'm giving this house a purpose beyond hosting your toxic dinner parties. How dare you? No, Eleanor, how dare you? I stepped closer. For 5 years, I tried to be good enough for your family. I smiled through your insults, endured your criticism, watched you turn my husband against me piece by piece. Emerson made his own choices. Yes, he did. And so did I. I pulled out my phone and showed her Francisco's latest Instagram post. My restoration of a damaged Renaissance Madonna, now gleaming with new life. The post had over 50,000 likes. What is this? This is what I've been doing while you were all laughing at my little hobby. Building a reputation, creating connections, proving that broken things can become masterpieces. A truck pulled up, carrying the custom gallery lighting. Eleanor watched, her perfectly manicured hands trembling. The opening is in 3 weeks, I continued. Critics from every major art publication will be here. They're particularly interested in my piece about family betrayal. You know, the one inspired by Thanksgiving? You wouldn't dare. Watch me. I nodded to Marcus, who stepped forward. Now, unless you'd like to be escorted off the property, I suggest you leave. I have work to do. As Eleanor stormed off, Francisco appeared beside me, carrying a fresh canvas. Nicely handled, he said. Ready to get back to work? Inside, I stood before my centerpiece, a massive triptych that dominated the main wall. The left panel showed a shattered wine glass, drops of blood-red wine frozen in mid-fall. The center panel was still in progress, a chaos of dark colors and sharp edges. The right panel remained blank. I can't figure out how to end it, I admitted, picking up my brush. Because you're not at the end yet. Francisco adjusted his glasses. The story's still unfolding. My phone buzzed. A text from Ali. OMG, you need to see this. She'd sent a link to Cora's social media post, a long rant about family loyalty and artistic sacrilege, complete with photos of the estate's ongoing transformation. The comments section was unexpectedly divided, with several prominent art world figures defending the renovation. Look at this one. Francisco pointed to a comment from a famous gallery owner. Bold vision. Can't wait to see the space. I smiled, adding a streak of gold to the central panel. Think they'll come to the opening? They already RSVP'd, along with half the city's art scene. He squeezed my shoulder. Your revenge is going viral, my dear. I stepped back, studying my work. The paint glistened, wet and alive, like an open wound healing into something beautiful. It's not just revenge anymore, I realized. It's resurrection. A crash from the foyer interrupted us. We rushed out to find one of Eleanor's old portraits had fallen, its frame cracked. Should we restore it? Francisco asked. I picked up the painting, running my fingers along its gilded frame. No, this one stays broken. Sometimes we need reminders of what we're leaving behind. I propped it against the wall, next to my supplies. A visual contrast between the old world and the new one I was creating. 3 weeks, Francisco mused. Think you'll be ready? I dipped my brush in paint, the color of dawn. I already am. They just don't know it yet. Returning to my triptych, I began to work on the final panel, finally seeing how it should end. Not with destruction or triumph, but with transformation. The moment when broken glass becomes a prism, scattering light in all directions. Behind me, the workers continued their symphony of renewal, and somewhere in the city, the Blakes plotted their next move. But here, in this room filled with possibility, I was already free. Opening night. The transformed Blake estate hummed with energy as hundreds of guests filtered through its renewed spaces. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over exposed brick walls, and the scent of fresh paint mingled with expensive perfume. Is that the director from The Modern? Ali whispered, nudging me. And oh my God, there's that famous art critic from The Times. I smoothed down my black dress, designer, purchased with restoration money. Focus, Ali. Any sign of the Blakes? Not yet, but... She stopped mid-sentence. Scratch that. Eleanor just walked in, and she brought reinforcements. Eleanor swept through the front door like an avenging angel, Cora and Emerson flanking her. She wore funeral black, as if mourning her former home. Cora's baby bump was visible under her tight red dress. Deep breath. Francisco appeared at my elbow, champagne in hand. Remember, this is your night. I watched Eleanor's face as she took in the changes. Gone were her precious antique wallpapers and stuffy portraits. In their place, clean gallery walls displayed my work, a journey of destruction and rebirth told through art. Ladies and gentlemen, Francisco's voice carried across the crowd. If I could have your attention, please. It's time for our artist to say a few words. The room quieted. I stepped onto the small platform we'd set up, feeling hundreds of eyes on me. Eleanor's glare could have frozen hell. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began. This house has a long history of tradition. For generations, it stood as a symbol of legacy and inheritance. Today, it begins a new chapter. I gestured to the walls around us. Each piece you see tells a story of transformation, of taking something broken and making it not just whole again, but better. Different. True. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Several critics were taking notes. And now, I continued, I'd like to unveil the centerpiece of tonight's exhibition. 2 assistants pulled the black cloth from the triptych. Gasps echoed through the room. In the final panel, I'd painted what looked like thousands of shards of broken glass, each one catching and reflecting light differently, creating a kaleidoscope of color and possibility. "I call it Thanksgiving grace," I said, looking directly at Eleanor. The art critic from the Times stepped forward. "The emotional depth is stunning, the progression from destruction to transcendence. Tell us, what inspired this piece?" Before I could answer, Eleanor's voice cut through the crowd. "I'll tell you what inspired it. Spite, revenge. This entire spectacle is nothing but a tantrum from a woman who couldn't accept her place in our family." The room went silent. Cameras turned toward the drama unfolding. "You're right, Eleanor," I said calmly. "This is about not accepting my place. Because the place you tried to put me in was too small, too dark, too false. How dare you? No." My voice rang out stronger. "How dare you come here and try to diminish this? Look around. Every person in this room sees the beauty I've created. Every critic, every collector, every artist. They all understand what you never could." "And what's that?" Cora sneered. "That true legacy isn't about preserving the past. It's about transforming it into something meaningful." I gestured to the triptych. "Every broken piece in these paintings came from something real. That wine glass from Thanksgiving. Those shattered frames you threw away. Even the tears I shed. They're all here, made beautiful." The Times critic was scribbling frantically. Eleanor's face had gone pale. "You think you've won something here?" she hissed. "You've destroyed our home." "No, Eleanor, I've given it purpose." I picked up a glass of champagne. "To new beginnings." The crowd raised their glasses, effectively dismissing Eleanor's outburst. As conversations resumed, I watched Emerson lead his mother and sister away from the main gallery. "Holy shit," Allie breathed. "That was amazing." Francisco squeezed my shoulder. "Look." A wealthy collector was placing a red dot next to the triptych. "Sold, for more money than I'd ever seen in my life." Around the room, other red dots were appearing next to my pieces. "Olive?" A quiet voice behind me. I turned to find Emerson. "The divorce papers are on your lawyer's desk," I said before he could speak. "Signed." "I know, He looked around the transformed space. "I never knew you could do all this." "You never looked." I turned away from him, toward a group of admirers waiting to speak with me. "Goodbye, Emerson." As I moved through my gallery, my space, my creation, I felt lighter with each step. The Blakes had tried to break me, but they'd only succeeded in helping me create something extraordinary. The Times critic caught my eye and raised his glass. Behind him, through the window, I could see Eleanor's car pulling away into the night. Let her go, I thought. The house had a new story now, and this one, finally, was mine to tell. "Have you seen this?" Allie burst into my studio, waving her tablet. "The Times review just dropped." I set down my restoration tools, carefully stepping away from the 18th century landscape I'd been working on. 1 week after the opening, and the buzz hadn't died down. "Read it to me," I said, wiping my hands on my apron. "In a stunning debut, artist and restoration expert Olive transforms family drama into transcendent art. The converted Blake estate now stands as a testament to rebirth, both architectural and personal." Allie looked up, grinning. "It goes on like that for 3 paragraphs. My phone buzzed. Riley calling. "Hold that thought." "Turn on the news," Riley said without preamble. "Channel 7. I grabbed the remote for the small TV I kept in the studio for background noise. The headline made my stomach drop. "Prominent Family Faces Financial Scandal." "Sources reveal that the Blake Investment Group has been under federal investigation for months," the reporter was saying. "Eleanor Blake and her son Emerson are accused of mismanaging client funds." "Oh my God." Allie's hand flew to her mouth. "That's not all," Riley said through the phone. "They've been using the estate as collateral for loans. If you hadn't gotten that deed when you did, the implications hit me like a physical blow. They would have lost the house anyway." "Exactly. And any art or artifacts inside would have been seized as assets?" On screen, footage showed Eleanor being escorted from her office building, head down, ignoring reporters' questions. Emerson was nowhere in sight. "Where's Emerson?" I asked Riley. Word is he's cooperating with investigators. Turned on his mother to save himself. Of course he had. Emerson had always been good at saving himself. My other line beeped, Cora's number. After a moment's hesitation, I switched calls. What do you want, Cora? Please. Her voice was thick with tears. I need your help. Why would I help you? Because I'm about to lose everything. She broke down, sobbing. The baby. I don't have anywhere to go. Francisco walked in, took one look at my face and mouthed, What's wrong? I held up a finger. Cora, I know I was horrible to you, she cut in. I was jealous. You had real talent, real passion, and I just had family money. Money that turned out to be stolen. I closed my eyes, remembering all the times she'd mocked my art, my dreams, my very existence in her perfect world. The guest house, I said finally. It's small, but it's clean. You can stay there until you figure things out. Silence on the line, then quietly, Why would you do this? Because I'm not you. I looked at my triptych hanging on the studio wall. And because sometimes broken things deserve a chance to be rebuilt. After hanging up, I filled Francisco and Ali in on everything. You're really going to help her? Ali asked incredulously. The guest house is where I used to paint, I said, running my hands over the antique frame I'd been restoring. It's where I learned who I really was, despite everything they did to break me. Maybe Cora needs that too. Francisco nodded approvingly. Speaking of rebuilding, he pulled out a newspaper clipping. The city's Historic Preservation Society wants to hire us. Apparently our work here has impressed them. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Riley. Eleanor's lawyer reached out. She wants to make a deal. No deals, I texted back. The house stays as it is. You know, Ali said, reading over my shoulder, you could probably buy their entire company for pennies now. I shook my head. I don't want their company. I want this. I gestured around the studio at the half-finished restorations and new works in progress. This is real. This matters. Through the window, I watched a car pull up. Cora, with a small suitcase. She looked lost, nothing like the proud woman who'd laughed at my pain just weeks ago. I should go help her get settled, I said. Are you sure about this? Ali asked one more time. I picked up a small painting from my workbench, a simple landscape I'd restored, where damage had left beautiful patterns in the aged varnish. Sometimes the cracks are what make something interesting. Francisco smiled. Go. Be interesting. As I walked out to meet Cora, I passed the spot where that wine glass had shattered on Thanksgiving. Now it was marked by a small brass plaque. Here begins the restoration. Karma had come for the Blakes, but not in the way I'd expected, and somehow, in the midst of their destruction, I'd found a way to create something lasting, something true, something that finally was completely my own. The colors need to be warmer here, Francisco said, pointing to a section of the newly restored painting. See how the light catches? I adjusted my magnifying glass, studying the brush strokes. The restoration studio hummed with activity, 3 apprentices working at their stations, Cora cataloging pieces at her desk by the window. The doorbell chimed. Through the security camera, I saw Eleanor standing at the gate. Want me to send her away? Cora offered, one hand resting on her very pregnant belly. No. I set down my tools. I'll handle this. Eleanor had aged years in just a few months. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple slacks and a sweater. She clutched a familiar-looking canvas. What do you want, Eleanor? She held out the canvas. This was in my mother's attic. I thought, maybe you could restore it. I unwrapped the painting carefully. A wedding portrait. Eleanor and her late husband on their wedding day. The canvas was cracked, the colors dulled by decades of neglect. Why bring it to me? Because you're the best. She swallowed hard. And because I owe you an apology. I studied the painting without responding. I was wrong about you, she continued. About your talent, your vision, everything. I was so focused on preserving what was, I couldn't see what could be. Like your son's illegal activities? She flinched. I enabled him, protected him when I should have. She gestured at the transformed estate. You did what I never could. You made something new. Inside, I could see Cora watching us, her face unreadable. The restoration will take time, I said finally, and it won't be cheap. I understand. I can pay. No, I met her eyes. You'll work for it. We need someone to manage the gallery's administrative side. Cora's going on maternity leave soon. Eleanor stared at me, then at the building behind me, at the brass plaque, at the elegant gallery spaces visible through the windows, at her daughter working inside. You'd trust me? After everything? Trust is earned. I handed her a business card. Be here Monday at 9. We'll start with filing. As she turned to leave, I added, Eleanor, the painting, I'll make it beautiful again, but it won't be exactly the same. I know. She smiled sadly. Maybe that's the point. Back inside, Cora was waiting. You're really hiring her? Everyone deserves a chance to restore what's broken. I set the wedding portrait on my workbench. Even Eleanor. Even Emerson? He made his choices. I picked up my tools again. This is about making new choices. Francisco appeared with fresh coffee. Speaking of choices, the Historic Society called again. They want us to handle the restoration of the old theater downtown. Take it, I said. But first, help me with this. Together, we examined Eleanor's wedding portrait, pointing out areas that needed attention, discussing techniques. Through the window, I could see Eleanor still standing at the gate, looking up at the house she'd lost, and maybe finally seeing it for what it had become. My phone buzzed, a text from Emerson. I'm sorry for everything. I deleted it without responding. Some things weren't meant to be restored. Look at this detail, Francisco said, pointing to a tiny flower in the portrait's background. Almost invisible now, but once we bring it back, it'll change the whole composition, I finished. Exactly. He squeezed my shoulder. Just like you did. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, catching the gold leaf in my triptych, making it shimmer. Below it, new students worked on their own restorations, learning to see beauty in broken things. Cora waddled over with paperwork. The gallery bookings are full through next season, and that critic from the Times wants to do a follow-up piece. Tell him yes, I said, carefully beginning the cleaning process on Eleanor's portrait. But make sure he mentions our restoration school. That's the future. As I worked, I could feel the painting's history under my fingers, decades of joy and pain, pride and loss, all waiting to be transformed, not erased, but renewed, made stronger by its scars, just like me. Ready to begin? Francisco asked, preparing his tools. I looked around my studio, at my students learning their craft, at Cora finding her place, at the space I'd created from the ashes of betrayal, at the legacy I was building, piece by restored piece. Yes, I said, dipping my brush in solvent. I'm ready. And as I began to work, bringing light back to Eleanor's forgotten memories, I realized that this moment, this place, this purpose, was the revenge I'd really wanted all along. Not destruction, but creation. Not endings, but beginnings. Not broken, but beautifully restored.
The sound of Nathan's laughter drifted through the open window, and my stomach clenched. I knew that laugh. It was the one he reserved for her. I set down my mug of tea with trembling hands and peered out into our backyard. There they were, Nathan and Abigail, heads bent close together over his phone. My husband's childhood friend had become a constant presence in our lives, and I was sick of it. Hey, you two, I called out, forcing a smile as I stepped onto the patio. What's so funny? Nathan looked up, his blue eyes twinkling. Oh, Molly, come here. You've got to see this video Abby sent me. It's hilarious. I gritted my teeth at the nickname. No one else called her Abby. I walked over, my arms crossed tightly over my chest. Abigail flashed me a bright smile. Hi, Molly, how are you feeling? Nathan told me you weren't feeling well earlier. I'm fine, I said curtly. What's this video about? Nathan held out his phone, but I made no move to take it. After an awkward moment, he pulled it back. It's, just a funny cat video. You know how Abby loves those. Right, I said, because you two have so much in common. Nathan's brow furrowed. Molly, what's wrong? I took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger bubbling inside me. Nothing. I just thought we were going to have a quiet evening at home. I didn't realize Abigail would be joining us. Again. Abigail's smile faltered. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. I can go. No. Nathan said quickly. You're not intruding. Molly's just tired, right, honey? I stared at him, incredulous. Was he really going to dismiss my feelings like that? Actually, I said, my voice tight, I'd like to talk to my husband. Alone. Abigail stood up, smoothing her skirt. Of course. I should be heading home anyway. Thanks for the coffee, Nathan. As she walked towards the gate, Nathan called out, Drive safe, Abby. The moment she was out of earshot, I rounded on him. What the hell, Nathan? We had plans tonight. He held up his hands defensively. Whoa, calm down. Abigail just stopped by for a quick coffee. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal, I snapped. She's always here, always texting you, always the topic of conversation. I'm sick of it. Nathan's face hardened. She's my oldest friend, Molly. You knew that when we got married. Friend? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it when you spend more time with her than your own wife? That's not fair, he said, his voice rising. I work with Abigail. We're on the same project. Of course we spend time together. I shook my head, fighting back tears. It's more than that, and you know it. The way you look at her, the inside jokes. I feel like I'm the third wheel in my own marriage. Nathan's expression softened. He reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away. Molly, honey, you're overreacting. There's nothing going on between me and Abigail. I love you. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to. But the nagging doubt in my gut wouldn't go away. Then prove it, I said. Set some boundaries with her. Put our marriage first. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. You're being ridiculous. I'm not going to cut off my best friend just because you're feeling insecure. His words hit me like a slap. Insecure? Is that what he thought this was? Before I could respond, Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw Abigail's name flash on the screen. I have to take this, he said, already turning away. It's about work. As he walked into the house, answering the call with a cheerful, Hey, Abby, I stood there, frozen. In that moment, I knew. Something had to change. And if Nathan wouldn't do it, I would have to take matters into my own hands. I stared at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, my heart racing with a mix of joy and dread. After months of trying, we'd finally done it. I was pregnant, but as I stood there in our bathroom, clutching the test, all I could think about was Abigail. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out into the bedroom where Nathan was getting dressed for work. Nathan, I said, my voice shaky. I have something to tell you. He turned, his tie hanging loosely around his neck. What is it, Molly? Is everything okay? I held out the test. I'm pregnant. For a moment, Nathan just stared at it. Then his face broke into a wide grin. Oh my God, Molly, that's amazing! He rushed over and wrapped me in a tight hug. I melted into his embrace, allowing myself a moment of pure happiness. This was what I'd wanted for so long, a family with the man I loved. But then Nathan's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He pulled away to check it, and I saw that familiar softening of his expression that only happened when Abigail texted. What is it? I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. Nathan's smile faltered slightly. Oh, it's Abigail. She has some news too, apparently. Yeah, she wants to meet up for lunch to tell us. My stomach clenched. Us? Why does she need to tell us both? He shrugged, already typing a reply. I don't know, but she says it's important. Come on, it'll be fun. We can celebrate our news too. I wanted to argue, to tell him that this should be our moment, just the two of us. But I bit my tongue. Fine, I said. Where are we meeting her? A few hours later, we sat across from Abigail at our usual cafe. She was practically glowing, like her hand resting on her stomach in a way that made my blood run cold. I'm so glad you both could make it, Abigail said, beaming. I have the most wonderful news. I gripped my water glass tightly, already knowing what she was going to say. I'm pregnant, Abigail announced, her eyes shining with tears of joy. Nathan's reaction felt like a punch to my gut. His face lit up and he reached across the table to grab Abigail's hand. Abby, that's incredible! Congratulations! I watched in horror as my husband and his best friend shared a moment of pure elation. It was as if I wasn't even there. Molly? Abigail's voice broke through my shock. Aren't you going to say anything? I plastered on a fake smile. Congratulations, Abigail. That's wonderful news. Nathan turned to me, his eyes dancing with excitement. Can you believe it, Molly? You're both pregnant at the same time. Our kids will grow up together, just like Abby and I did. In that moment, I felt like I was drowning. The thought of our children being as close as Nathan and Abigail made me want to scream. Actually, I said, my voice tight, I'm not feeling well. I think I need to go home. Nathan's brow furrowed with concern. Are you okay? Do you want me to come with you? I shook my head, already standing up. No, you stay. Celebrate with Abigail. I'll be fine on my own. As I walked out of the cafe, I heard Nathan call after me, but I didn't turn back. I couldn't bear to see him comforting Abigail, sharing in her joy while I felt like my world was crumbling. At home, I curled up on our bed, my hand resting on my still flat stomach. This should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, I felt more alone than ever. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision. How could I tell him that what I needed was for him to choose me, to put our family first? As I lay there, a resolve began to form in my heart. If Nathan wouldn't set boundaries with Abigail, I would have to take matters into my own hands. For the sake of my child, our child, I had to fight for my marriage. But first, I had to find out exactly what I was up against. The sharp pain in my abdomen jolted me awake. I gasped, clutching my stomach as another wave of agony washed over me. Nathan, I called out, panic rising in my throat. He stumbled into our bedroom, bleary-eyed. Molly, what's wrong? The baby, I choked out. Something's wrong with the baby. The next few hours passed in a blur of ambulance sirens, hospital corridors, and worried doctors. By dawn, I lay in a hospital bed, exhausted and scared, with Nathan holding my hand. The good news is, the baby's okay, the doctor said, her face serious. But you're experiencing some complications, Mrs. Walker. You'll need to be on bed rest for the next few weeks, at least. I nodded, relief washing over me. Our baby was safe, for now. As the doctor left, Nathan squeezed my hand. Don't worry, honey. I'll take care of everything. But over the next few days, it became clear that Nathan's idea of taking care of everything meant calling Abigail for help. I was dozing on the couch when I heard them in the kitchen. Thanks for coming over, Abby, Nathan said. I don't know what I'd do without you. Of course, Abigail replied. Anything for you two. How's Molly doing? She's struggling, Nathan sighed. This bed rest is really getting to her. I clenched my fists, fighting back tears. How dare he discuss me with her like that? Nathan, I called out, my voice sharp. Can you come here, please? He appeared in the doorway, Abigail hovering behind him. What is it, Molly? Do you need something? Yes, I said, sitting up slowly. I need to talk to my husband, alone. Abigail's face fell. Oh, I'll go start on dinner. As soon as she was out of earshot, I turned to Nathan. What is she doing here? He ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. She's helping, Molly. You heard the doctor. You need to rest. And I need my husband, I shot back. Not his, whatever she is to you. Nathan's eyes flashed with anger. She's my friend, Molly. My pregnant friend who's going through this alone. The least we can do is help her out. Help her out? I laughed bitterly. Nathan, I'm your wife. I'm carrying your child, and I'm the one who needs help right now. He softened, sitting on the edge of the couch. I know, honey, and I'm here for you, but Abigail needs us too. I shook my head, tears spilling over. No, Nathan, you need to choose. It's her or me. The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan stared at me, his face a mix of shock and hurt. Molly, you can't ask me to do that. In that moment, something inside me broke. I think you've already made your choice, I whispered. Before Nathan could respond, Abigail's voice drifted in from the kitchen. Nathan? Can you come help me with this? He hesitated, looking between me and the kitchen door. I should. Go, I said, turning away from him. Just go. As Nathan left the room, I heard him and Abigail laughing together in the kitchen. The sound cut through me like a knife. I placed a protective hand over my stomach, a fierce determination taking root in my heart. If Nathan wouldn't put our family first, I would have to take matters into my own hands. Slowly, carefully, I reached for my phone and dialed a number I never thought I'd use. Hello? A gruff voice answered. Richard? I said, my voice trembling. It's Molly. I need your help. Nathan's father was silent for a moment. Then, what's going on, Molly? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It's about Nathan and Abigail. There's something you and Janet need to know. As I began to speak, I knew there was no going back. But for the sake of my child, I was ready to fight, even if it meant tearing everything apart. The tiny microphone felt like a lead weight in my hand. I stared at it, my heart pounding with a mix of guilt and determination. Was I really going to do this? Spy on my own husband? Molly? Sarah's voice snapped me back to reality. My old college roommate stood in my living room, concern etched on her face. Are you sure about this? I nodded, swallowing hard. I have to know, Sarah, for my sake and for my baby's. She sighed, running a hand through her short blonde hair. I get it. This is a big step. There's no going back once you do this. I know, I whispered, but I can't live like this anymore. The constant doubt, the suspicion, it's eating me alive. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. Okay, let's do this then. With trembling hands, I unzipped Nathan's work bag. The guilt threatened to overwhelm me, but I pushed it down. I thought of all the late nights at the office, the secretive text messages, the way his eyes lit up when Abigail walked into a room. No, I had to know the truth. I carefully tucked the tiny microphone into a hidden pocket, making sure it was secure. Just as I zipped the bag closed, I heard the front door open. Molly, I'm home! Panic surged through me. Quick, I hissed to Sarah. Act natural! Nathan walked into the living room, his eyebrows raising in surprise. Oh, hey, Sarah, I didn't know you were coming over. Sarah plastered on a smile. Just checking on the mama-to-be. How are you, Nathan? As they made small talk, I tried to calm my racing heart. Had he noticed anything amiss? But Nathan seemed oblivious, kissing me on the cheek before heading to the kitchen. I've got to run, he called out, meeting Abigail for dinner to go over some work stuff. Of course he was. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to sound casual. Okay, honey, have fun. As soon as the door closed behind him, I collapsed onto the couch, my legs shaking. Sarah sat beside me, her face grim. You okay? I nodded, unable to speak. What had I just done? The next few days were torture. Every time Nathan left the house, I found myself glued to my phone, listening intently through the app connected to the microphone. Most of it was mundane, work conversations, small talk with colleagues, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Then, on the third day, I heard it. Abby, we need to talk. Nathan's voice was low, serious. My heart stopped. This was it. I know, Nate. Abigail replied, her voice thick with emotion. I can't keep doing this. It's not fair to anyone. You're right, Nathan sighed. We have to tell her. Molly deserves to know the truth. Tears streamed down my face as I listened. My worst fears confirmed. They were having an affair, and now they were planning to come clean. But as I continued to listen, my confusion grew. Something wasn't adding up. They weren't talking about a romantic relationship at all. Instead, I heard phrases like genetic testing and family history. Suddenly, the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. Abigail wasn't just Nathan's childhood friend. She was his half-sister. The revelation left me reeling. All this time, I'd been suspicious of the wrong thing entirely. But why had they kept this a secret? And what did it mean for our baby? As I sat there, my mind racing, I knew I had a decision to make. Do I confront Nathan with what I've learned? Or do I wait for him to come to me? One thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. And as I placed a protective hand over my growing belly, I realized that the stakes were higher than ever. Whatever came next, I had to be ready to fight for my family, no matter the cost. I sat in my car, parked across the street from the little cafe where Nathan and Abigail were meeting. My hands shook as I adjusted the earpiece connected to the listening device in Nathan's bag. This was it, the moment of truth. Are you sure you want to do this, Molly? Sarah's voice crackled through my phone. It's not too late to turn back. I took a deep breath. I have to know, Sarah. For my sanity, for my baby, I need to hear it for myself. As if on cue, Nathan's voice came through the earpiece. Abby, we can't keep doing this. It's tearing me apart. My heart clenched. Here it was, the confession I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. I know, Nate, Abigail replied, her voice thick with emotion. But what choice do we have? If we tell Molly the truth, it could destroy everything. Tears blurred my vision as I listened, each word a dagger to my heart. but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. "She deserves to know that her baby might be at risk," Nathan said. "The genetic testing results." I froze. Genetic testing? What were they talking about? Abigail's voice trembled. "I know, but how do we tell her that your father, that he's my father too? That there's a chance our babies could have the same genetic disorder?" The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I just heard. Abigail was Nathan's half-sister? This wasn't an affair. It was something far more complicated. "We have to tell her," Nathan insisted. "And my parents. God, Dad doesn't even know about you. This is such a mess." I sat there, stunned, as they continued to talk. The pieces started to fall into place. The secretive conversations, the intense bond, the shared worry over their pregnancies. It wasn't betrayal I'd been sensing, but fear and guilt over a family secret. Suddenly, a tap on my window made me jump. I looked up to see Richard, Nathan's father, peering in at me with concern. "Molly? What are you doing out here?" Panic surged through me. I scrambled to turn off the listening device and hide the earpiece. "Richard, I was just—" But as I looked into his eyes so similar to Nathan's, and I now realized, to Abigail's, something in me snapped. I got out of the car, my legs shaky but my resolve firm. "We need to talk, Richard. All of us." His brow furrowed. "What's going on, Molly?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. "I know about Abigail. I know she's your daughter." The color drained from Richard's face. How did you—" "It doesn't matter," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "What matters is that we're all going to sit down and talk about this, now." Before he could respond, I marched towards the cafe, Richard trailing behind me in shocked silence. As I pushed open the door, Nathan and Abigail looked up, their faces paling at the sight of us. "Molly?" Nathan stood, his voice filled with confusion and fear. "Dad? What's going on?" I looked at each of them in turn. My husband, his secret sister, their father. The weight of their secrets, of my own actions, pressed down on me, but I refused to buckle under it. "What's going on?" I said, my voice steady, "is that we're going to have a long overdue family meeting, and we're going to start with the truth. All of it." As I sat down at their table, I knew there was no turning back. Whatever happened next would change all of our lives forever. But for the sake of my child, of all our children, I was ready to face it head-on. The tension in Janet's living room was suffocating. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my hands protectively cradling my swollen belly as I faced the people who had turned my world upside down. Nathan paced nervously, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Abigail perched on an armchair, her face pale and drawn. Richard stood by the fireplace, looking like a man about to face a firing squad. And Janet, bless her heart, bustled about offering tea and cookies as if this were just another family gathering. "Enough," I said, my voice cutting through the awkward silence. "It's time we all laid our cards on the table." Nathan stopped pacing, his eyes finally meeting mine. "Molly, I don't know where to start." "How about with the truth?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "The whole truth, Nathan, about you and Abigail." Janet gasped, nearly dropping the tea tray. "What about Nathan and Abigail?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "They're half-siblings. Isn't that right, Richard?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Richard, who seemed to age a decade in that moment. "It's true," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Abigail is my daughter. I had an affair years ago. I never knew about her until recently." Janet's face crumpled. "Richard, how could you?" As Janet's sobs filled the room, I turned to Nathan and Abigail. "And you two? How long have you known?" Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "A few months. We found out when Abigail was doing some genetic testing for her pregnancy. The doctor noticed some similarities in our family histories." "And you didn't think to tell me?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "Your wife? The mother of your child?" "We were scared, Molly," Abigail said, tears streaming down her face. "We didn't know how to tell anyone. And then when we found out about the genetic risk for our babies—" My heart clenched. "What genetic risk?" Nathan knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. "There's a chance our baby might have a rare genetic disorder. It's why Abigail and I have been spending so much time together. We've been consulting specialists, trying to figure out our options." I pulled my hands away, feeling sick. "So you've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back, all because you couldn't find the courage to tell me the truth?" I'm so sorry, Molly, Nathan pleaded. We never meant to hurt you. We were just trying to protect everyone. Protect everyone? I laughed bitterly. Look around, Nathan. Does anyone in this room look protected to you? Janet was still crying softly, comforted by a guilt-ridden Richard. Abigail looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. And Nathan? Nathan just looked lost. I stood up, my legs shaky but my resolve firm. I think I've heard enough. I need some air. As I headed for the door, Nathan called after me. Molly, wait, where are you going? I turned back, taking in the scene one last time. This family, with all its secrets and lies. My husband, torn between loyalty to his sister and his wife. My unborn child facing an uncertain future. I don't know, I said honestly, but I do know this. I can't stay here. Not now. Maybe not ever. With that, I walked out, ignoring the pleas behind me. As I got into my car, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, I realized I had no idea where to go or what to do next. But one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same again. And as I drove away from the house that held so many shattered dreams, I knew I had a choice to make. Fight for this family that had betrayed me, or forge a new path on my own. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, for myself and for my child. The manila envelope felt heavy in my hands as I stood outside Nathan's office. My heart raced, but my resolve was ironclad. This was it. The moment that would change everything. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Nathan looked up, surprise flickering across his face. Molly, what are you doing here? We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Now. He nodded, gesturing for me to sit. I remained standing. I've made a decision, Nathan, I said, placing the envelope on his desk. I want a divorce. The color drained from his face. Molly, please, we can work this out. I know I messed up, but... No, I cut him off. There's no working this out. You lied to me. You put Abigail before me, before our child. I can't trust you anymore. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. What about the baby? Our family? I placed a protective hand over my swollen belly. I'll raise this child on my own if I have to, but I won't subject them to a life of lies and divided loyalties. Just then there was a commotion outside. The door burst open, and Richard and Janet rushed in, followed closely by Abigail. We heard you were here, Janet said, breathless. Molly, dear, please reconsider. We're family. I laughed bitterly. Family? Is that what you call this mess of secrets and betrayal? Richard stepped forward, his face grave. Molly, I know we've all made mistakes, but surely we can find a way to move past this, for the sake of the children. The children, I repeated, my anger rising. You mean the children who might have life-threatening genetic disorders because of your affair? The children who will grow up in a web of lies unless someone has the courage to break the cycle? Abigail sobbed quietly in the corner. I'm so sorry, Molly. I never meant for any of this to happen. I turned to her, my voice softening slightly. I know, Abigail, but intent doesn't change the outcome. We all have to live with the consequences of our actions. Nathan stood, reaching for me. Molly, please, I love you. We can get through this together. I stepped back, out of his reach. No, Nathan, love isn't enough. Not anymore. I picked up the envelope and handed it to him. These are the divorce papers. I'm asking for full custody with supervised visitation for you. I also want alimony and child support. Nathan's face crumpled as he leafed through the documents. This is everything. You're taking everything. Not everything, I said quietly. Just what I need to start over, to give our child a chance at a life free from all of this. Richard cleared his throat. Now, Molly, let's not be hasty. Perhaps we can come to some sort of arrangement. For the sake of the family name. The family name? I exploded. Is that all you care about? Your precious reputation? Janet stepped in, her voice pleading. Molly, dear, we can help. We'll support you and the baby. You don't have to do this alone. For a moment, I wavered. The thought of facing single motherhood was terrifying. But then I looked at their faces. Nathan's guilt, Abigail's shame, Richard and Janet's desperate attempts to maintain control, and I knew what I had to do. I appreciate the offer, I said, my voice firm. But I think it's best for everyone if I make a clean break. This family has too many secrets, too much baggage. My child deserves a fresh start. I turned to leave, but Nathan's voice stopped me. Molly, wait, what about the genetic testing? What if our baby needs us, all of us, to get through this? I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. The weight of everything, the lies, the betrayal, the uncertain future, pressed down on me. For a moment I felt like I couldn't breathe, but then I felt a small kick from within, my baby reminding me of what was truly important. I turned back to face them one last time. If that happens, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but for now this is goodbye. As I walked out of the office, leaving behind a chorus of protests and pleas, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally taking control of my own destiny. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, for myself and for my child. The hospital corridor seemed endless as I waddled towards the maternity ward, one hand on my swollen belly, the other clutching my overnight bag. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and longing for in equal measure. As I approached the nurse's station, a familiar voice called out, "Molly!" I turned to see Nathan rushing towards me, his face a mix of concern and excitement. Behind him, Abigail waddled along, her own pregnancy now in its final stages. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice tight with pain and emotion. Nathan reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I know I don't have the right," he said, "but I couldn't miss this. It's our child, Molly." Before I could respond, a contraction hit me hard. I doubled over, gasping. "She needs help," Abigail called out, and suddenly I was surrounded by nurses, being ushered into a delivery room. The next few hours passed in a blur of pain, sweat, and determination. Through it all, Nathan stayed by my side, holding my hand, whispering encouragement. Despite everything, I found myself grateful for his presence. Finally, with one last push, our daughter entered the world. As her cries filled the room, I felt a love so fierce it took my breath away. "She's beautiful," Nathan whispered, tears streaming down his face. As the nurses cleaned her up, a doctor approached us, his face serious. "Mr. and Mrs. Walker, we need to run some tests. Given your family history..." Reality came crashing back. The genetic disorder. The reason for all the secrecy and pain. "Do whatever you need to do," I said firmly. The weight was excruciating. Nathan paced the room while I cradled our daughter, memorizing every perfect feature. Finally, the doctor returned. "I have good news," he said, smiling. "Your daughter is perfectly healthy, no signs of the genetic disorder." Relief washed over me, so powerful I thought I might faint. Nathan collapsed into a chair, sobbing with joy. Just then a commotion erupted in the hallway. Abigail's voice, filled with panic, carried into the room. "Something's wrong. The baby." Nathan's head snapped up, torn between staying with us and going to his sister. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the same one that had torn our marriage apart. In that moment, looking down at our healthy daughter, I made a decision. "Go," I said softly. "She needs you." Nathan hesitated. "Molly, It's okay," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "We'll be here when you get back." As Nathan rushed out, I held our daughter close, marveling at the twist of fate. After everything we'd been through, she was the one untouched by the family's dark legacy. Hours passed. I dozed fitfully, waking to every little sound. Finally, Nathan returned, his face etched with grief. "Abigail's baby," he began, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, meaning it despite everything. Nathan looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. "Molly, I know I don't deserve it, but I want to try again, to be the husband and father you both deserve." I gazed down at our sleeping daughter, then back at Nathan. The anger and hurt were still there, but alongside them was something else. Understanding, compassion, maybe even the seeds of forgiveness. "I can't promise anything," I said slowly, "but for her sake, I'm willing to try, to find a way forward together." Nathan nodded, tears in his eyes. "That's all I ask." As the sun rose on a new day, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But looking at our daughter, I knew we had a reason to try. Whatever came next, we would face it as a family. Not the perfect, unblemished family I'd once dreamed of, but a real one. Flawed, complicated, but bound together by love and the promise of a new beginning. As I drifted off to sleep, our daughter nestled safely in my arms and Nathan keeping watch nearby, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful things can grow from the most broken places. And that perhaps was the greatest lesson of all. The smell of cinnamon and betrayal hung thick in the air as I stared at the slice of apple pie on my plate. My mother-in-law, Martha, beamed at me from across the dining table, her eyes twinkling with what I now recognized as malice. "Go on, Anna, dear. I made it especially for you," Martha cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I forced a smile, my stomach churning. "It looks delicious, Martha. But you know I'm allergic to cinnamon, right?" Martha's expression flickered for a moment before settling back into a mask of innocence. "Oh, silly me, I must have forgotten. How careless of me." My husband, Sam, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mom, you've known about Anna's allergy for years. How could you forget?" I watched as Martha's facade cracked slightly. She waved her hand dismissively. "At my age, dear, these things slip the mind. Now who wants coffee?" As Martha bustled off to the kitchen, I exchanged a glance with Sam. He looked apologetic, but I could see the conflict in his eyes. This wasn't the first time his mother had forgotten about my dietary restrictions, and I was beginning to suspect it wasn't accidental at all. "I'm sorry, honey," Sam whispered, reaching for my hand. "I'll talk to her again." I squeezed his fingers, appreciating his support, but knowing it wouldn't change anything. "It's okay. I'm used to it by now." Just then, Sam's father, David, and his brother Kyle entered the dining room, their booming voices filling the space. "Well, well, if it isn't the happy couple," Kyle smirked, clapping Sam on the back. "Still letting the little woman dictate your diet, bro?" I bristled at his words, but before I could respond, David chimed in. Now, Kyle, if Sam wants to live on rabbit food, that's his business, though I don't know how he stays standing without a good steak in him." Their laughter grated on my nerves, and I could feel my cheeks burning. Sam shifted uncomfortably beside me, torn between defending me and not rocking the boat with his family. Martha returned with a tray of coffee cups, her smile back in place. "Here we are. Anna, dear, I made yours decaf. I know how sensitive you are to caffeine." I bit my tongue, knowing full well that I had never mentioned any sensitivity to caffeine. In fact, I relied on my morning cup of joe to get through the day. But arguing would only make things worse. "Thank you, Martha," I said, taking the cup with a tight smile. As the conversation flowed around me, I found myself retreating into my thoughts. How had it come to this? When Sam and I first married, I had been so excited to become part of his family. But over the years, Martha's subtle jabs and forgetfulness had worn me down. David and Kyle's dismissive attitudes didn't help either. I was jolted from my reverie by Kyle's loud voice. "So, Anna, when are you two going to give Mom some grandkids? The biological clock's ticking, you know?" The room fell silent, and I felt all eyes on me. Sam tensed beside me, knowing how sensitive this topic was. We had been trying for a baby for months with no success, and the pressure from his family was becoming unbearable. I plastered on a smile, determined not to let them see how much their words hurt. "We're just enjoying being married for now, Kyle, but thanks for your concern." Martha clucked her tongue. "Oh, but darling, you don't want to wait too long. At your age, it only gets harder." Something inside me snapped. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me, I need some air." As I rushed out of the dining room, I could hear Sam making excuses for me. But I didn't care. I needed to escape, to breathe, to figure out how I was going to survive this family without losing myself in the process. Standing on the porch, I took deep breaths of the cool evening air. I knew I had a choice to make. I could continue to endure Martha's subtle cruelty and the family's dismissive attitude, or I could take a stand. But how? And at what cost to my marriage? As I heard footsteps approaching from inside, I steeled myself. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. Things couldn't go on like this. Something had to change, and soon. The drive home from Martha's house was tense, the silence between Sam and me as thick as the fog rolling in outside. I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on us, threatening to suffocate what was left of our peace. "I'm sorry about tonight," Sam finally said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "They can be difficult." I let out a humorless laugh. "Difficult? Sam, your mother tried to poison me with cinnamon. Again." He winced. I know, but she's just set in her ways. She doesn't mean any harm." "Doesn't she?" I turned to face him, feeling the frustration bubbling up inside me. "Because it feels pretty intentional from where I'm sitting." Sam sighed, running a hand through his hair. What do you want me to do, Anna? They're my family. And what am I? The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't take them back now. The rest of the ride passed in silence, the tension between us growing with each mile. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I felt like I was going to explode. As soon as we were inside, I headed straight for the bedroom, needing some space to breathe. But Sam followed, his face a mask of concern and guilt. Anna, please, talk to me, he pleaded. I whirled around, the dam finally breaking. What's there to talk about, Sam? Your mother hates me. Your father and brother treat me like I'm invisible. And you just stand there and let it happen. Sam's face fell. That's not fair. You know how much I love you. Do I? I challenged, my voice cracking. Because sometimes it feels like you love keeping the peace more than you love me. The hurt in Sam's eyes was palpable, but I couldn't stop now. All the pain and frustration of the past few years came pouring out. Every time we visit, it's the same thing. Martha forgets about my allergies. David and Kyle make snide comments about my career, my choices, even my body. And you just smile and nod and pretend everything's fine. Sam reached for me, but I stepped back. Anna, please, I'm trying. I don't know how to make everyone happy. Maybe that's the problem, I said softly. You can't make everyone happy, Sam. At some point you have to choose. The silence that followed was deafening. Sam looked lost, torn between his love for me and his loyalty to his family. And in that moment, I realized just how deep this problem ran. I think, I started, my voice barely above a whisper. I think I need some time alone. Sam's eyes widened in panic. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I'm going to stay with my sister for a few days. I need to clear my head, figure out what I want. Anna, no, Sam pleaded, reaching for me again. This time, I let him take my hands. We can work this out. I'll talk to them, I promise. Things will be different. I looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, but also the fear. I hope so, Sam. I really do. But I can't keep living like this. Something has to change. As I packed a small bag, Sam hovered nearby, looking lost and helpless. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to tell him everything would be okay. But the truth was, I didn't know if it would be. Standing at the front door, bag in hand, I turned to face my husband one last time. I love you, Sam. But I need to love myself, too. With those words hanging in the air, I stepped out into the night, leaving behind a stunned Sam and an uncertain future. As I drove away, tears streaming down my face, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of the end, or the start of something new? The road ahead was dark and foggy, much like my thoughts. But one thing was clear. I couldn't go back to the way things were. It was time for a change, no matter how scary that might be. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it in the dark, my sister's guest room slowly coming into focus. Sam's name flashed on the screen. Anna, you need to come home. His voice was tight with worry. It's my mother. She's here and well, you need to see this. My heart raced as I threw on clothes and rushed out the door. What could Martha possibly be up to now? As I pulled into our driveway, I saw Martha's car parked haphazardly on the lawn. The front door was wide open, and I could hear raised voices from inside. I stepped into chaos. Martha was in our living room, surrounded by grocery bags and cooking utensils. The air was thick with the smell of cinnamon and something burning. Anna, darling, Martha exclaimed, her eyes wild. I'm making you a feast, all your favorites. Sam stood nearby, looking helpless. Mom, please. Anna doesn't eat these things. You know that. Martha waved him off. Nonsense. I'm going to prove to Anna how much I care. No more misunderstandings. I approached cautiously. Martha, what's going on? She turned to me, flour smeared across her cheek. I'm fixing everything, dear. Sam told me how upset you were. I'm going to make it all better with food. My eyes met Sam's over Martha's shoulder. He mouthed, I'm sorry, looking utterly lost. Just then, David and Kyle burst through the open door. Mom, Kyle shouted. What the hell are you doing? David's face was red with anger. Martha, you're embarrassing yourself. Let's go home. Martha's eyes filled with tears. No, I have to make things right. Anna needs to see how much I love her. I felt a twinge of pity, mixed with frustration. This woman had made my life miserable for years, and now she was having a breakdown in my living room. Martha, I said gently, I appreciate the gesture, but this isn't necessary. We need to talk, not whatever this is. She turned to me, desperation in her eyes. But I have to prove it to you. I'm not a monster, Anna. I just wanted to protect my family. Protect them from what? I asked, genuinely curious. Martha's shoulders sagged. From change. From losing them. When Sam married you, I was so afraid he'd forget about us. I thought if I could make you uncomfortable, you'd leave and everything would go back to normal. The room fell silent. Sam looked shocked, David uncomfortable, and Kyle... Was that guilt on his face? I took a deep breath. Martha, your actions hurt me deeply, but this isn't the way to fix things. Suddenly, smoke began billowing from the kitchen. The pie, Martha shrieked, rushing to salvage her creation. As Sam and Kyle dealt with the small fire, I found myself face-to-face with David. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. Anna, he said gruffly, I'm sorry, we've been unfair to you. I nodded, not quite ready to forgive, but appreciating the effort. It's a start, David. As the chaos settled, we all stood in the wreckage of Martha's misguided attempt at reconciliation. The air was thick with smoke, tension, and the possibility of change. Martha emerged from the kitchen, holding a blackened pie. I've ruined everything, she whispered. I looked at this broken woman, then at Sam, who seemed torn between his wife and his family. In that moment, I realized that the path forward wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. No, Martha, I said, surprising myself. You haven't ruined everything, but we have a lot of work to do. As I met Sam's gaze, I saw a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way through this mess. But one thing was certain. Things would never be the same again. The weeks following Martha's kitchen meltdown were a strange dance of tentative peace and simmering tension. Sam and I had moved back in together, but the air between us was thick with unspoken words and lingering doubts. Martha, for her part, had been uncharacteristically quiet, her usual barbs replaced by an awkward silence that was almost worse. It was during one of our now mandatory Sunday dinners at Martha and David's that everything changed. As we sat around the dining table, the clinking of silverware the only sound breaking the uncomfortable silence, Martha suddenly stood up. I've made a special dessert, she announced, her voice trembling slightly. Anna, this one's just for you. My stomach clenched as she disappeared into the kitchen. Sam squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. When Martha returned, she was carrying a beautifully decorated cake. It's cinnamon-free, she said, placing it in front of me. And I hope you'll like it. I stared at the cake, then at Martha's hopeful face. This was the moment of truth. Taking a deep breath, I cut a small slice and took a bite. The flavor exploded on my tongue, rich, sweet, and utterly delicious. But more than that, it was the first time in years that Martha had made something specifically catering to my needs. It's amazing, I said, surprised by the emotion in my voice. Martha's face lit up, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the woman Sam had always insisted his mother could be. But then Kyle snorted, breaking the spell. So what? Now we're all supposed to bend over backwards for Anna's precious diet, he sneered. David cleared his throat uncomfortably. Now, Kyle. But Kyle was on a roll. No, I'm sick of this. Ever since she came into our lives, it's been nothing but drama. Sam used to be fun before he married her. Now look at him. He's whipped. Sam stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's enough, Kyle. I watched in shock as the two brothers faced off, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. Martha wrung her hands helplessly, while David looked torn between intervening and letting it play out. You don't get it, do you? Kyle spat. She's tearing this family apart. Something inside me snapped. I stood up, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. No, Kyle. Your family was broken long before I came along. I just refused to play by your dysfunctional rules. The room fell silent. Kyle gaped at me, unused to being challenged. Sam looked at me with a mixture of pride and concern, but it was Martha's reaction that surprised me most. She's right, Martha said softly. I've been so wrong about everything. David shifted uncomfortably. Martha, don't be ridiculous. We've always... No, David. Martha cut him off, her voice growing stronger. We haven't. We've been cruel and selfish, and it stops now. As the weight of Martha's words sank in, I felt a shift in the air. It was as if a long-held breath had finally been released. But with that release came a new tension, the uncertainty of what came next. I looked at Sam, seeing the conflict in his eyes. He was caught between his love for me and his ingrained loyalty to his family. In that moment, I knew we were at a crossroads. I think, I said slowly, my heart pounding, that we all need to decide what kind of family we want to be. Because this can't continue. The silence that followed was deafening. Martha nodded, tears in her eyes. David looked lost while Kyle fumed silently. And Sam reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. As we stood there, surrounded by the remnants of a disastrous dinner and years of pent-up emotions, I realized that whatever happened next would change everything. The question was, were we all ready for that change? Looking around at the faces of my in-laws, some hostile, some remorseful, all uncertain, I knew that the real battle was just beginning, and I was ready to fight. The tension from that disastrous dinner lingered like a storm cloud over our lives. Sam and I tiptoed around each other, the weight of unspoken words growing heavier by the day. It was during one sleepless night that I finally broke. "Sam," I whispered into the darkness, "we need to talk about your family." He sighed, rolling over to face me. "I know, I don't know how to fix this, Anna." "Maybe it's not about fixing," I said, sitting up. "Maybe it's about facing the truth." And so, in the quiet of our bedroom, I laid it all out. Every slight, every accidental allergen, every dismissive comment. As I spoke, I watched Sam's face crumple, the reality of his family's behavior finally sinking in. I knew some of it, he admitted, his voice breaking, but I didn't want to believe it was intentional. "God, Anna, I'm so sorry." His admission was both a relief and a fresh wound. "Why didn't you say anything?" Sam ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. "They're my family, I thought if I just tried harder, if we gave them time, they'd come around." "And now?" I asked, my heart pounding. He met my gaze, determination replacing the uncertainty in his eyes. "Now, we fight back. Together." The next morning, we formulated a plan. We would confront his family one last time, lay everything on the table, and demand change. It was risky, but it felt like our only option. As we pulled up to Martha and David's house that evening, my stomach was in knots. Sam squeezed my hand reassuringly before we stepped out of the car. Martha greeted us at the door, her smile faltering at our serious expressions. "Is everything all right?" "We need to talk," Sam said firmly. "All of us." David and Kyle were already in the living room, eyebrows raised at our unexpected visit. As we all sat down, the air thick with tension, I took a deep breath and began. "For years," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I've endured subtle cruelty and dismissal from this family. It stops now." Kyle scoffed, but Sam silenced him with a glare. "She's right. Mom, Dad, Kyle, the way you've treated Anna is unacceptable." Martha's face paled. "But we've been trying." "No," I cut in, years of frustration finally boiling over. "Trying would be respecting my allergies, not using them against me. Trying would be treating me like family, not an intruder." David shifted uncomfortably. "Now, see here." But Sam wasn't finished. "I've let this go on too long. I love you all, but I love Anna too. And if you can't accept her, truly accept her, then—" He trailed off, the unspoken ultimatum hanging in the air. Kyle jumped to his feet, face red with anger. "So that's it? You're choosing her over your own blood?" "I'm choosing respect and kindness," Sam shot back. "Something you all seem to have forgotten." As the argument escalated, with accusations flying and old wounds reopening, I watched Martha. She sat silently, her eyes darting between her sons, her husband, and me. Suddenly, she stood up. "Enough," she cried, her voice cracking. I've been horrible, to all of you." The room fell silent as Martha continued, tears streaming down her face. "I was so afraid of losing my family that I pushed everyone away. Anna, I'm truly sorry." Her words hung in the air, a fragile offering of peace. But as I looked around at the stunned faces of Sam's family, I realized this was just the beginning. The real test would be what came next. "I appreciate that, Martha," I said carefully. "But apologies aren't enough. We need real change." Sam nodded, standing beside me. "We're giving you all one last chance, but if things don't improve, if we can't find a way to be a real family, we're done." The silence that followed was deafening. David looked shell-shocked. Kyle fumed silently, and Martha looked both terrified and hopeful. As we left that night, the future uncertain but full of possibility, I knew we had just taken the first step on a difficult journey. The question now was, would Sam's family join us, or would we be forced to walk away for good? New Year's Day arrived with a mixture of hope and trepidation. As Sam and I pulled up to his parents' house, I couldn't shake the feeling that this visit would be different from all the others. "Ready?" Sam asked, squeezing my hand. I nodded, steeling myself, as I'll ever be. The moment we stepped inside, I knew something had changed. The air wasn't thick with tension as usual. Instead, there was an almost palpable sense of effort. Martha greeted us with a tentative smile. "Happy New Year, dears. Come in, come in." As we entered the dining room, my jaw dropped. The table was laden with an extravagant feast, but what caught my eye were the carefully labeled dishes. Cinnamon-free, allergen-safe, Anna's favorite. I turned to Martha, speechless. She wrung her hands nervously. I hope I got it right this time." Sam's eyes were wide with surprise. "Mom, this is incredible." Even David and Kyle seemed subdued, watching the scene unfold with a mix of curiosity and discomfort. As we sat down to eat, the conversation was stilted but civil. Martha kept glancing at me as if seeking approval. I found myself actually enjoying the food, savoring flavors I'd been denied for years in this house. Midway through the meal, Sam cleared his throat. "Actually, we have a surprise for you, Mom." Martha looked up, startled. "For me?" Sam nodded, and I reached into my bag, pulling out a small wrapped package. "Happy birthday, Martha." The room fell silent. Martha stared at the gift, then at us, her eyes filling with tears. "But my birthday was last week. How did you—" "We remembered," I said softly. "We've always remembered." Martha's hands shook as she unwrapped the gift, a beautiful photo album filled with family pictures, including several of her with Sam and me that she'd never seen before. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Sam leaned forward. "Mom, we want to be a family, a real family, but that means acknowledging and celebrating everyone, including you." David shifted uncomfortably. "Martha, dear, I didn't realize we'd forgotten your birthday." Kyle, for once, looked ashamed. "Yeah, Mom, I'm sorry." As Martha flipped through the album, her tears falling freely now, I felt a shift in the room. It was as if a long frozen ice was finally beginning to thaw. But then Kyle, perhaps uncomfortable with the emotional atmosphere, reverted to his old ways. "Well, isn't this touching?" he sneered. "Saint Anna saves the day again." "Kyle," David warned, but the damage was done. Martha's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with an anger I'd never seen before. "That's enough, Kyle! Can't you see what your brother and Anna are trying to do? They're offering us a chance to be better, to be the family we should have been all along." Kyle stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "Oh, so now you're on their side? What happened to family loyalty?" "This is family loyalty," Martha shot back. "True loyalty means holding each other accountable, not enabling bad behavior." As Kyle stormed out, slamming the front door behind him, the room fell into a stunned silence. Martha looked shell-shocked, as if she couldn't believe her own words. David cleared his throat. "Martha, I think we need to talk about a lot of things." Sam and I exchanged glances, realizing we were witnessing a seismic shift in family dynamics. But as hopeful as this moment was, I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. Martha turned to us, her eyes brimming with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "Anna, Sam, thank you for not giving up on us. On me." As I looked at this woman, this flawed, complex woman who had caused me so much pain but was now trying so hard to change, I realized we were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The question was, could we all take that final terrifying leap towards real change? The answer, I knew, would determine not just the future of our family, but the very core of who we all were. And as I met Sam's gaze across the table, I silently prayed we were ready for whatever came next. The days following the New Year's dinner were a whirlwind of emotions and tentative steps towards reconciliation. Martha had been calling more frequently, her voice tinged with a newfound warmth that both comforted and unsettled me. It was during one of these calls that she invited Sam and me over for coffee, insisting she needed to talk to us about something important. As we pulled up to the house, my heart raced. Sam squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Whatever happens, we're in this together," he said. Martha greeted us at the door, her smile nervous but genuine. As we settled in the living room, I noticed the photo album we'd given her prominently displayed on the coffee table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Martha began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "About my behavior, about our family, about everything." I held my breath, sensing we were on the cusp of something monumental. "Anna," Martha turned to me, her eyes brimming with tears, "I owe you the biggest apology. My actions were inexcusable. I was so afraid of losing my son that I nearly drove him away entirely." The words I'd longed to hear for years hung in the air between us. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt a complex mix of emotions washing over me. "Martha," I started, my voice surprisingly steady, "I appreciate your apology. But I need to know, why? Why did you treat me that way for so long?" Martha's face crumpled. I was jealous and scared. When Sam married you, I felt like I was being replaced. I thought if I could make you uncomfortable enough, you'd leave and everything would go back to how it was." Her admission hit me like a physical blow. Years of pain, of feeling unwelcome and unloved, all because of one woman's insecurity. Sam leaned forward, his voice tight with emotion. "Mom, how could you think that? Anna was never a threat to you." "I know that now," Martha whispered. "But back then, I let my fears control me. I became someone I didn't recognize." As Martha's tears fell freely, I felt my own eyes welling up. The weight of years of resentment pressed down on me, threatening to suffocate us all. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Kyle stormed in, his face red with anger. "What's going on here? Another family meeting without me?" David appeared behind him, looking flustered. "Kyle, please, we were just what?" Kyle spat. "Letting Anna take over the family, turning Mom against us?" The tension in the room skyrocketed. Sam stood up, positioning himself between Kyle and me. "That's enough, Kyle. This isn't about taking sides, it's about fixing what's broken." Kyle laughed bitterly. "Broken? The only thing broken here is your loyalty to your real family." Martha rose shakily to her feet. "Kyle, stop this. Anna is family. I've been wrong for so long, and it's time we all faced the truth." As Kyle's face contorted with rage, I saw years of family dynamics playing out before me. The favored son, the peacemaking mother, the distant father, all roles that had contributed to this toxic environment. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. Standing up, I faced Kyle directly. "I'm not here to take anyone's place. I'm here because I love Sam, and I want us all to be a real family. But that can't happen until we address the real issues." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "What issues?" "The way you treat your mother, for one," I said, my voice gaining strength. "The way this family has ignored her needs, her birthday, her very existence as anything other than a caretaker." Martha gasped softly behind me, and I could feel Sam's supportive presence at my side. "Who do you think you are?" Kyle snarled, taking a step towards me. But I stood my ground. "I'm your sister-in-law. I'm Sam's wife, and I'm done being the scapegoat for this family's problems." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. David looked lost, Kyle fumed, and Martha looked at me with a mixture of awe and gratitude that nearly broke my heart. As we stood there, on the precipice of either total destruction or true healing, I realized that everything, our future, our family, our very sense of self, hung in the balance. The next few moments would determine not just the fate of our relationships, but the course of all our lives, and I was ready for whatever came next. The weeks following our confrontation were a whirlwind of change. Martha, to everyone's surprise, was the catalyst. One sunny morning, she called us all together for a family meeting. "I've made a decision," she announced, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm moving out. I need to find myself, away from all of this." The room erupted in chaos. David sputtered in disbelief. Kyle raged about family loyalty, but Sam looked at his mother with a mixture of pride and understanding that brought tears to my eyes. As the dust settled, Martha turned to me. "Anna, I owe you so much. You showed me what real strength looks like." In that moment, years of resentment melted away. I hugged her, both of us crying, years of pain and misunderstanding finally healing. Martha's decision sent shockwaves through the family. David, lost without his wife to manage every aspect of his life, floundered. Kyle, suddenly without his mother's constant support, faced the harsh reality of his own shortcomings. Months passed, and we watched in awe as Martha blossomed. She rented a small apartment, took art classes, even started dating. The woman who had once been my nemesis was now a source of inspiration. "I never knew life could be this full," Martha confided during one of our now regular coffee dates. "I spent so many years trying to control everything, I forgot to actually live." Meanwhile, David and Kyle struggled. Without Martha's financial management, they faced a series of setbacks. Kyle lost his job, unable to function without constant coddling. David, forced to fend for himself, realized how much he'd taken Martha for granted. It was during a particularly difficult family dinner that everything came to a head. Kyle, drunk and belligerent, lashed out at Martha. "You abandoned us," he shouted. "Some mother you are." I watched, heart pounding, as Martha straightened her spine. "No, Kyle, I didn't abandon you. I saved myself, and it's time you grew up and did the same." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to everyone's shock, David spoke up. "She's right, son," he said softly. "We've all been living in a fantasy. It's time we faced reality." As Kyle stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt a shift in the air. It was as if the last piece of a long unsolved puzzle had finally fallen into place. In the months that followed, our family underwent a transformation. David, humbled by his struggles, began to appreciate Martha in ways he never had before. They started dating again, rediscovering each other as equals. Kyle, after hitting rock bottom, finally sought help for his dependency issues. And Sam and I? We found ourselves in a new role, the stable center of a family learning to love and respect each other. It was on a warm summer evening, as we all gathered in Martha's new backyard for a barbecue, that I fully realized how far we'd come. Martha, radiant in her newfound confidence, was laughing with Sam as they grilled. David was actually helping, a novelty that still surprised us all. Even Kyle, sober and subdued, was making an effort to engage positively. As I watched them, a wave of emotion washed over me. The journey had been long and painful, but the destination, it was more beautiful than I could have imagined. Sam came over, wrapping an arm around me. "You okay?" he asked, noticing my tears. I nodded, leaning into him, just thinking about how far we've come, how different things could have been if we'd given up. He kissed my forehead. "You never gave up on any of us, even when we didn't deserve it." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over our imperfect but healing family, I felt a sense of peace I'd never known before. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. Real families never are, but we had the tools and the love to face whatever came our way. Martha caught my eye across the yard and raised her glass in a silent toast. I raised mine in return, acknowledging the journey we'd shared. From bitter enemies to unlikely allies, we'd forged a bond stronger than I'd ever thought possible. As night fell and laughter filled the air, I realized that this messy, complicated, beautiful family was everything I'd ever wanted. And it had been worth every moment of struggle to get here. In the end, it wasn't about winning or losing, about right or wrong. It was about growth, forgiveness, and the courage to change. And as I looked around at the faces of my family, my real family, I knew that we had all, in our own ways, found the strength to do just that. The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my concentration. I'd been grading papers at the dining room table, enjoying a rare moment of peace in my usually chaotic life. But of course that couldn't last. "Oops, sorry, Leah," Bella's shrill voice called from the kitchen. "I'll clean it up later." I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to take a deep breath before responding. "It's fine, Bella. I'll take care of it." As I grabbed the broom and dustpan, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, I barely recognized myself. At 35, I should be thriving in my career as an assistant professor, not playing maid to my irresponsible sister-in-law. The front door opened and Sam trudged in, looking exhausted. "Hey, honey," he mumbled, barely meeting my eyes. "Sam, we need to talk," I said, setting aside the broom. "Why are Bella's things all over our guest room?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, she's going through a rough patch. Lost her job again. I told her she could crash here for a few days." "A few days?" I echoed, my voice rising. "Sam, her stuff is everywhere. It looks like she's moving in." Before he could respond, Bella sauntered into the room, still in her pajamas despite it being nearly noon. "Oh, hey, big bro. Thanks again for letting me stay. You're a lifesaver." I watched in disbelief as she planted a kiss on Sam's cheek, then flopped onto our couch, reaching for the TV remote. "Bella," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I thought you were looking for a new job today." She waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, you know how it is. The market's tough right now. I'll get to it tomorrow." I turned to Sam, silently pleading for backup, but he just shrugged helplessly. I'm heading to bed, he mumbled. Early shift tomorrow. As he disappeared upstairs, I felt a familiar knot of tension forming in my stomach. Something was off with Sam lately, beyond just the stress of his job. We'd barely spoken in weeks, and now this situation with Bella. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother-in-law, Christine. Heard Bella's staying with you. So kind of you to help out. Roger and I are thrilled you're all getting along so well. I nearly laughed out loud. Of course, Christine and Roger were thrilled. It meant they didn't have to deal with their youngest daughter's latest crisis. Leah? Bella's voice interrupted my thoughts. Do you guys have any snacks? I'm starving. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 before responding. There's fruit in the fridge, Bella. Help yourself. She made a face. Ugh, no junk food? How do you live like this? As I watched her rummage through our kitchen, leaving a trail of mess in her wake, I felt something inside me snap. That's it, I muttered, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. Where are you going? Bella called after me. Out, I replied curtly. Don't wait up. I slammed the door behind me, relishing the momentary silence. As I got into my car, I realized I had no idea where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't spend another minute in that house. My phone buzzed again, another text from Christine. By the way, Olivia mentioned she might need a place to stay for a while, too. You have room for one more, right? I stared at the message in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. How had my life spiraled so far out of control? As I pulled out of the driveway, I made a silent vow to myself. Something had to change, and soon. I just had to figure out what and how. I returned home late that night, hoping to find some peace. Instead, I walked into a disaster zone. Bella's clothes were strewn across the living room, and the kitchen sink overflowed with dirty dishes. The scent of stale pizza hung in the air. Sam? I called out, my voice tight with frustration. We need to talk. Now! He emerged from our bedroom, looking sheepish. Hey, Leah, I was just about to clean up. Save it, I snapped. This isn't about the mess. It's about Bella. She can't stay here, Sam. It's not working. His face hardened. She's my sister, Leah. Where's she supposed to go? I don't know, but this isn't sustainable. Our house isn't a halfway home for unemployed relatives. Sam's eyes flashed with anger. That's rich coming from you. At least I'm trying to help my family. What's that supposed to mean? He hesitated, then blurted out. I lost my job, okay? 2 weeks ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. The room spun. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. You what? How could you keep this from me? I was ashamed, he mumbled. I thought I could find something else quickly, but what? You decided to invite your jobless sister to live with us instead? She understands what I'm going through, Sam shouted. Unlike you, always wrapped up in your work, your students, your precious career. The words stung like a slap. I've been supporting us, Sam, paying the bills, keeping this household running, and this is how you repay me? Before he could respond, Bella stumbled in, clearly tipsy. Whoa, what's with all the yelling? Can't a girl get some beauty sleep around here? I rounded on her. Bella, this isn't working. You need to find somewhere else to stay. Her lower lip trembled. But Sam said I could stay as long as I needed, right, Sam? I turned to my husband, silently daring him to side with her. To my shock, he nodded. Yeah, Bells, you're welcome here. Unbelievable, I muttered. So that's it? I don't get a say in my own home? Sam's expression softened. Leah, please, we're all going through tough times. Can't we just support each other? I laughed bitterly. Support? Is that what you call lying to me for weeks? Inviting your sister to move in without even discussing it? Bella piped up. Hey, I can hear you. You know, if you don't want me here, just say so. I have been saying so, I exploded. But neither of you seems to care what I think or feel. Sam reached for me, but I jerked away. Don't. Just don't. I can't deal with this right now. I stormed upstairs, slamming our bedroom door behind me. As I collapsed onto the bed, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Hey sis, everything okay? Sam mentioned you might need some help around the house. I could come stay for a while if you need me. I stared at the message in disbelief. Was this some kind of sick joke? Had Sam invited his entire family to move in without telling me? Downstairs, I could hear Sam and Bella talking in hushed voices. My husband and his sister conspiring against me in my own home. The betrayal cut deep. I typed out a quick response to Olivia. Thanks, but I think we have enough house guests at the moment. Talk soon. As I hit send, a cold determination settled over me. This couldn't continue. Something had to give, and I was done being the only one making sacrifices. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start looking for my own place. If Sam and Bella wanted to play house, they could do it without me. It was time to take back control of my life, even if it meant walking away from everything I thought I knew. With that resolution, I drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of empty houses and endless arguments, wondering how my life had unraveled so quickly. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Christine's name flashed and my stomach dropped. Just what I needed. Another lecture from my mother-in-law. "Hello," I answered, my voice still thick with sleep. "Leah, dear, I hope I didn't wake you." Christine's saccharine tone grated on my nerves. "I just wanted to check in. How are things with Bella?" I bit back a sarcastic retort. "Things are tense, Christine. I don't think this arrangement is working out." "Oh, nonsense," she chirped. "I'm sure you're all getting along splendidly. Bella's always been such a joy to have around." I nearly choked. "A joy? Christine, she's turned our house upside down. She doesn't clean, doesn't look for work, and Sam—" "Now, Leah," Christine interrupted, her voice taking on a steely edge. "I'm sure you're exaggerating. Bella's going through a rough patch. As family, we need to support her." "And what about supporting me?" I snapped. "This is my home, too, and I didn't agree to any of this." There was a pause. Then Christine spoke again, her tone dripping with disappointment. "I expected better from you, Leah. You've always been so rigid. Perhaps this is an opportunity for you to learn some flexibility." The conversation devolved from there, with Christine lecturing me on family loyalty and the importance of sacrifice. By the time I hung up, my blood was boiling. I stormed downstairs, ready to confront Sam and Bella, only to find the living room in even worse shape than before. Bella lounged on the couch, still in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone. "Oh, hey, Leah," she said without looking up. "We're out of milk. Could you pick some up?" Something inside me snapped. "No, Bella, I will not pick up milk. This isn't a hotel, and I'm not your maid." She finally glanced up, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Geez, what's your problem?" I was just asking. "My problem," I seethed, "is that you've been here for days, contributing nothing but mess and chaos. When are you planning to look for a job, or at least clean up after yourself?" Bella's face crumpled. "You don't understand. It's hard out there. I'm trying, but—" "But what?" I interrupted. "You seem to have plenty of energy for going out drinking and watching TV all day. Leave her alone, Leah." Sam's voice came from behind me. I whirled to face him, fury building. "Of course you're taking her side," I spat. "God forbid either of you take any responsibility." Sam's face hardened. "That's not fair." "We're both going through a tough time." "And I'm not," I shot back. "I'm the only one holding things together while you two play house." The argument escalated, voices rising until we were all shouting over each other. Suddenly, a crash from the kitchen silenced us. We rushed in to find Bella standing amidst shattered glass, my grandmother's antique vase in pieces at her feet. I was just trying to clean up," she whimpered. I stared at the broken shards, feeling something break inside me as well. Without a word, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Sam called after me. "Anywhere but here," I replied, my voice cold. "I can't do this anymore." As I pulled out of the driveway, my phone buzzed again. A text from Roger, my father-in-law. "Heard you're having some trouble at home. Remember, family comes first. Don't let your career get in the way of what really matters." I tossed the phone aside, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They were all against me. Sam, Bella, Christine, Roger. How had I become the villain in my own life? As I drove aimlessly, one thought crystallized in my mind. Something had to change, and if no one else was willing to make that change, it would have to be me. I returned home late that evening, exhausted and emotionally drained. The house was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. As I stepped into the living room, I froze. Bella had redecorated, my carefully chosen furnishings pushed aside to make room for her garish taste. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, my fists clenching at my sides. "Oh, hey, Leah!" Bella chirped, emerging from the kitchen. I thought I'd spruce the place up a bit. It was so boring before. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "Bella, we need to talk. This can't continue. You need to start looking for a job and your own place to live." She rolled her eyes. Geez, you sound just like Mom and Dad. Can't you just chill? No, I can't chill, I snapped. This is my home, and you're treating it like a frat house. Where's Sam? As if on cue, Sam trudged down the stairs looking sheepish. Hey, honey, I see you've noticed the changes. I rounded on him. You let her do this without even asking me? He shrugged helplessly. I thought it might cheer you up. You've been so stressed lately. Stressed? I laughed bitterly. I wonder why. Maybe because my husband lost his job and didn't tell me, then invited his unemployed sister to live with us indefinitely? Bella piped up. Hey, I'm right here, you know. Trust me, I'm aware, I retorted. Look, I'm setting some ground rules. Starting tomorrow, you both need to be actively job hunting, and Bella, you need to contribute to household chores and expenses. They exchanged glances, and I saw something pass between them that made my blood run cold. Actually, Sam began hesitantly, I've been thinking, maybe we could invite Olivia to stay for a while, too. You know, to help with expenses. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Are you serious? You want to invite your other sister to live here, too? Well, yeah, Bella chimed in. Olivia's got a great job. She could totally help out with the bills and stuff. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. They weren't just taking advantage of my hospitality. They were planning to turn our home into some kind of family commune, with me footing the bill. Absolutely not, I said firmly. This is not up for discussion. In fact, Bella, I want you out by the end of the week. Sam's face hardened. You can't just kick her out, Leah. She's family. And what am I? I shot back. Because lately it feels like I'm just a meal ticket and a maid service. The argument escalated quickly, voices rising until we were all shouting over each other. Suddenly my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Hey sis, just booked my flight. Can't wait to see you all next week. I stared at the message in disbelief, then looked up at Sam and Bella's guilty faces. You already invited her, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, without even talking to me. Sam reached for me, but I jerked away. Leah, please, we're just trying to keep the family together. Family? I laughed bitterly. That what you call this? Because from where I'm standing it looks a lot like betrayal. I stormed upstairs, my mind racing. This was it, the final straw. I couldn't live like this anymore, constantly undermined and disrespected in my own home. As I threw some clothes into a suitcase, I made a decision. It was time to put myself first for once. I'd stay with a colleague for a few days, clear my head, and figure out my next move. But one thing was certain. I wouldn't be coming back to this chaos. It was time to reclaim my life, even if it meant leaving behind everything I thought I knew. With a heavy heart but a sense of resolve, I zipped up my suitcase and headed for the door, ignoring Sam and Bella's protests. As I drove away, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was taking control of my own destiny. I sat in my colleague's guest room, staring at my phone. Olivia's number glared back at me, daring me to make the call. With a deep breath, I hit dial. Leah? Olivia's voice was warm, but cautious. Is everything okay? I've been trying to reach Sam, but he's not answering. I laughed bitterly. Oh, everything's just peachy. Did you know about their little plan? Plan? What are you talking about? I filled her in on the chaos of the past few weeks. Bella moving in, Sam's job loss, and now their scheme to have Olivia join the fray. Oh my God. Olivia gasped. Leah, I had no idea. Sam just said you guys could use some help with expenses. I never meant to intrude. Well, that makes one of you, I muttered. There was a pause, then Olivia spoke again, her voice firm. I'm canceling my flight. This is ridiculous. Have you talked to Mom and Dad about this? I scoffed. Oh, I've talked to them all right. They think I'm being selfish for not wanting to support the entire family. That's absurd, Olivia said. Look, I'm coming into town next week for a conference. Why don't we meet up and figure this out? As we made plans, I felt a glimmer of hope. At least one person in this family seemed to have their head on straight. After hanging up, I checked my messages. 5 missed calls from Sam, 3 from Bella, and a scathing text from Christine. Leah, how could you abandon your family like this? I thought we raised you better. Anger bubbled up inside me. Before I could stop myself, I fired back a response. You didn't raise me at all, Christine. I'm Sam's wife, not your daughter, and right now I'm not sure I want to be either. Seconds after hitting send, my phone rang. It was Roger. Leah, he began, his voice stern, I think you owe your mother-in-law an apology. I exploded. An apology? Are you kidding me? Your children have taken over my home, disrespected me at every turn, and you think I'm the one who needs to apologize? Now? Listen here. Roger started, but I cut him off. No, you listen. I'm done being the family doormat. If Sam and Bella want to play house, they can do it without me, and you and Christine can stop pretending you have any say in my life. I hung up, my hands shaking. Part of me felt liberated, but another part was terrified. What had I just done? My phone buzzed again, a text from Sam. Leah, please come home. We need to talk. I stared at the message, torn. Part of me wanted to rush back, to try and salvage what was left of my marriage. But a stronger part knew that going back now would just mean falling into the same old patterns. As I debated, another text came through, this time from Bella. Hey sis, no hard feelings about earlier, right? BW, I borrowed your car to go job hunting. Hope that's cool. That was the final straw. I'd left my car at home when I stormed out, and now Bella was joyriding in it, probably with no intention of actually looking for work. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. I couldn't go back. Not now, maybe not ever. It was time to start putting myself first. With shaking hands, I typed out a response to Sam. I'm sorry, but I can't come home right now. I need some time to think. Please tell Bella to return my car immediately, or I'll report it stolen. As I hit send, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I was standing up for myself. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was done being a supporting character in my own life story. It was time to take the lead. I stood on the doorstep of my own home, feeling like a stranger. It had been a week since I'd left, and Olivia's arrival for her conference had finally given me the courage to return. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The chaos that greeted me was beyond anything I'd imagined. Clothes, empty takeout containers, and beer bottles littered every surface. The air was thick with the stench of stale alcohol and unwashed bodies. Hello? I called out, my voice echoing in the eerie silence. Olivia appeared from the kitchen, her face a mask of shock and disgust. Leah, thank God you're here. I don't even know what to say. Before I could respond, Bella stumbled down the stairs, clearly hungover. Oh, hey sis, she slurred. Didn't expect to see you back so soon. My blood boiled. Where's Sam? I demanded. As if on cue, my husband emerged from our bedroom, looking disheveled and reeking of booze. Leah? He mumbled, rubbing his eyes. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? I repeated incredulously. This is my house, Sam. The better question is, what the hell have you been doing? Olivia stepped in, her voice tight with anger. They've been having a nonstop party, Leah. I got here yesterday, and it's been like this the whole time. I tried to talk some sense into them, but... Sam had the decency to look ashamed. Look, we just got a little carried away. Things have been tough, you know? Tough? I exploded. You think this is tough? Try working your ass off to support a family that doesn't appreciate you, only to come home and find it turned into a frat house. Bella piped up. Hey, we've been looking for jobs. Well, kind of. It's not our fault the market sucks. I rounded on her. And my car? Where is it, Bella? She paled. Oh, about that. There might have been a tiny accident. The room spun. I gripped the wall for support, trying to process everything. That's when I noticed something on the coffee table. Job applications, but not for the positions I'd expected. Sam, I said slowly, picking up the papers. What are these? He shifted uncomfortably. Well, I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a change. Those are applications for jobs overseas. You know, a fresh start for both of us. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Both of us? You made this decision without even talking to me? And what about my career, my students? I just thought. He trailed off, unable to meet my eyes. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. You didn't lose your job, did you? I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You quit, you were bored, so you threw away our stability, our future, without even discussing it with me. The silence that followed was deafening. Sam's guilty expression confirmed my suspicions. Olivia stepped forward, her face a mix of sympathy and disgust. Leah, I had no idea things had gotten this bad. I'm so sorry. I barely heard her. My world was crumbling around me, years of trust and partnership dissolving in an instant. Get out, I whispered, then louder. All of you, get out of my house. Now. Bella started to protest, but Olivia silenced her with a look. "Come on," she said, grabbing both Bella and Sam by the arm. "We're leaving." As they shuffled out, Sam turned back. "Leah, please, we can work this out." I met his gaze, seeing a stranger where my husband used to be. "No, Sam, we can't. This isn't just about the mess or Bella or even the job. You've betrayed my trust in every possible way. We're done." The door closed behind them, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my marriage. As the gravity of the situation hit me, I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my relationship, had been a lie. But amidst the pain and betrayal, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the push I needed to finally start living life on my own terms. I stood in the wreckage of my living room, surrounded by the debris of my shattered marriage. The silence was deafening after the chaos of the past few weeks. My phone buzzed incessantly, messages from Sam, Bella, Christine, and Roger, all demanding explanations, apologies, reconciliation. I ignored them all. With trembling hands, I dialed my lawyer's number. "Janet, it's Leah. I need to file for divorce. Today." As I hung up, a knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find Olivia, her face etched with concern. "Leah, I'm so sorry," she began, but I cut her off. Just don't. I can't handle any more apologies right now." She nodded, understanding. "I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to help. What do you need?" I laughed bitterly. "A time machine? A new family? A life that isn't falling apart?" Olivia stepped inside, surveying the mess. "Let's start with something more manageable. How about we clean this place up?" As we worked, Olivia filled me in on what had happened after they left. Sam and Bella were staying with their parents, all of them in denial about the gravity of the situation. "They think you'll cool off and come around," Olivia said, shaking her head. I tried to tell them this was different, but they won't listen. My phone rang again. "Sam?" This time I answered. "Leah, please," he begged. "We can work this out. I'll get my old job back. I'll make Bella move out. Just come home." "I am home, Sam," I replied, my voice steady. "You're the one who needs to leave. I've called a lawyer. It's over." There was a long pause. "You don't mean that," he finally said. "What about our life together? Our plans?" "What plans?" I snapped. "The ones you made without me? The job applications for positions halfway across the world? Or maybe you mean your plans to turn our home into a flophouse for your irresponsible sister?" "That's not fair," Sam protested. "We've been through a lot." "No, Sam, I've been through a lot. You've been having a midlife crisis at my expense. I'm done." I hung up, my hands shaking. Olivia placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," she said softly. Before I could respond, there was a commotion outside. We rushed to the window to see Sam's car screeching into the driveway, Bella in the passenger seat. "Oh no," Olivia muttered. "This isn't good." Sam burst through the door, his eyes wild. "Leah, you can't do this! We can fix this!" Bella stumbled in behind him, clearly drunk. "Yeah, sis, don't be such a buzzkill. We were just having some fun." I felt something snap inside me. Years of suppressed anger and resentment bubbled to the surface. "Fun," I shouted. "You call destroying my home, my marriage, my life fun? Get out, both of you. Get out now before I call the police." Sam reached for me, but Olivia stepped between us. She said, "Leave, Sam. Now." For a moment I thought he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Come on, Bella," he muttered. "Let's go." As they shuffled out, Bella turned back, her face twisted with spite. "You know what, Leah? You were always too uptight. Sam's better off without you." The door slammed behind them, leaving Olivia and me in stunned silence. "I can't believe this is happening," I whispered, sinking to the floor. Olivia sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you're going to be okay. You're strong, Leah. Stronger than all of them put together." As I sat there, surrounded by the ruins of my old life, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief wash over me. Everything I thought I knew had crumbled, but from the ashes, I could see the faint glimmer of a new beginning. "You're right," I said, wiping away tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. "I am strong, and it's time I started living for myself." 1 month after the explosive confrontation, I stood in my newly redecorated living room, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. The divorce papers lay signed on the coffee table, a bittersweet symbol of my newfound freedom. A gentle whine drew my attention to Rosie, my rescue dog, who patted over for a scratch behind the ears. Good girl, I murmured, grateful for her unconditional love. The doorbell rang and I tensed, half expecting another drama-filled encounter. But it was Olivia, her face a mix of determination and concern. "Hey, sis," she said, stepping inside. "How are you holding up?" I managed a small smile. Better than I expected, actually. It's peaceful. Olivia nodded, then took a deep breath. "Leah, there's something you should know. I went to see Sam and Bella at Mom and Dad's place yesterday." My heart raced. "And?" "It was a disaster," she sighed. "Bella's drinking has gotten worse, and Sam, he's a mess. He kept talking about winning you back, making grand plans that made no sense." I closed my eyes, fighting a wave of conflicting emotions. "That's not my problem anymore, Olivia." "I know," she said quickly, "and I'm not here to guilt you. I finally told them all exactly what I thought of their behavior, Mom and Dad included." My eyes snapped open. "You did what?" Olivia's face hardened. "I told them they were selfish, irresponsible, and that they'd driven away the best person in this family. I said if they didn't get their act together, they'd lose me too." I stared at her, speechless. Olivia had always been the peacekeeper, avoiding confrontation at all costs. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. She grabbed my hand. "Yes, I did. Leah, I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner. Can you forgive me?" Tears welled up in my eyes as I pulled her into a hug. "There's nothing to forgive. You're here now, and that means everything." As we embraced, my phone buzzed. A text from Sam. "I understand now. I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you can forgive me." I showed it to Olivia, who raised an eyebrow. "Are you going to respond?" I thought for a moment, then typed, "I forgive you, Sam. Not for you, but for me. I hope you find peace and learn from this. Goodbye." As I hit send, a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying lifted from my shoulders. I turned to Olivia, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. "You know what? I think it's time for a celebration," I declared. Olivia grinned. "What did you have in mind?" An hour later, we sat on my back porch, sipping wine and watching the sunset. Rosie lounged at our feet, content in the peaceful atmosphere. "To new beginnings," Olivia toasted, raising her glass. "And to family," I added, "the ones we choose." As we clinked glasses, I reflected on the tumultuous journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the heartache. It had all led to this moment of clarity and self-discovery. I realized that in losing the family I thought I needed, I'd found the strength I never knew I had. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the future. "You know," I said to Olivia, "I think I'm going to apply for that department head position at the university, the one I always thought was out of my reach." Olivia beamed. "That's fantastic. You'll be amazing." As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The chaos of the past few months had forged me into someone stronger, someone unafraid to stand up for herself and pursue her dreams. I looked at Olivia, my faithful ally, and down at Rosie, my loyal companion. This, I realized, was what true family looked like. Not the toxic relationships I'd left behind, but the supportive, loving connections I'd chosen for myself. "Here's to the next chapter," I said softly, more to myself than anyone else. And as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them, on my own terms, with my chosen family by my side.